Chapter 637. The leader of the beast horde was extremely smart. Once the cultivators moved out, it would send flying exotic beasts to attack the clansmen so that they could keep the cultivators at bay. When the ordinary humans and weaker cultivators saw the beast horde in the sky, they all hid in their houses or underground bunkers like Kacha. Now, it was a battle between the powerful cultivators and the exotic beast. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian out of the territory and flew straight ahead. They landed in a place where there were relatively fewer beasts. There was an exotic beast there. It was 7 meters long and had a single horn. It was covered in faint red fur and looked rather similar to a cow. Clearly, it was a herbivorous exotic beast. However, in a beast horde like this, both carnivorous and herbivorous exotic beasts only had humans as their enemies. They would only be hunted down by the carnivorous exotic beasts after the beast horde ended. As soon as they landed, Yang Tian charged at the exotic beast with his blade. It was also a returnance exotic beast. The little blue dragon had chosen it as its target. Without his cells lighting up like before, Yang Tian's battle prowess was no longer as great as before. His speed had also slowed down. Faced with Yang Tian's charge, the exotic beast lowered its head and charged at Yang Tian. When the two of them came into contact, Yang Tian quickly dodged to the side and slashed at the exotic beast with his blade. During this process, there was a plot. The slash was actually unable to cut through the exotic beast's skin. Yang Tian was surprised and dodged to the side. This was because there was a whooshing sound in front of him. A black shadow was whipping at him. The exotic beast had a long tail, which was also its weapon. The tail brushed past Yang Tian's face, causing a gust of wind that made Yang Tian's face hurt. If he had been struck by the tail, he would definitely have been injured. The powerful tail made up for the exotic beast's inability to turn around nimbly, preventing enemies from attacking it from the sides or behind. Yang Tian wasn't the only one dealing with this exotic beast. There was also the little blue dragon. When Yang Tian dodged to the side, the little blue dragon happened to be charging at him. Its tail slapped the side of the exotic beast's head. It looked like a slap to the exotic beast's face. Pring, a muffled sound was heard. Although the little blue dragon's current realm wasn't as high as this exotic beast's, its physical strength was very strong. The unicorn fell to the ground after being slapped by the little blue dragon's tail. Yang Tian seized the opportunity and flashed to the side of the exotic beast, stabbing his blade into its neck before it could turn over. At this moment, a powerful origin power surged out from the blade and destroyed most of the unicorn's internal organs. The unicorn's eyes were wide open. It twitched a little before it died completely. It took less than 20 seconds from the beginning of the attack to the end of the exotic beast. As soon as the unicorn was killed, a slender exotic beast that looked like a cheetah with light blue scales pounced from the side. Yang Tian didn't have time to retrieve the life crystal in the beast's carcass. He pulled out his sword and attacked the blue leopard. The little blue dragon was very eager for the life crystal in the exotic beast's carcass. It took the opportunity to land on the ground. Hissed, at this moment, Yang Tian swung his sword at the blue leopard. Under the control of his spiritual power, 3 red sword auras slashed at the blue leopard from 3 different directions. Boom, 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 as Yang Tian expected, the blue leopard was extremely fast. It twisted its body a few times and dodged to the side agilely. Yang Tian's 3 sword auras missed and hit the ground, creating 3 trenches in the ground. During the battle, Yang Tian glanced at the little blue dragon. He saw the little blue dragon lying beside the carcass. It opened its mouth wide and bit down on the carcass neck, tearing off a large chunk of meat. The little blue dragon rarely bit down in battle. He didn't think it would be so powerful. After dodging Yang Tian's attack, the blue leopard flashed and charged at Yang Tian once more. Yang Tian went up to meet it once more. 1 man and 1 beast, their figures flashed non-stop as they tangled together. There were also cultivators fighting exotic beasts nearby. The cultivators who could fight the beasts seemed to be even more powerful than Yang Tian. They easily slew the returnant's beasts one by one and removed their life crystals from their corpses. Although they all had storage tools, these cultivators followed the rules. After finding their life crystals, they put them in the leather pouches hanging from their waist. Many of the powerful cultivators' pouches were filled to the brim with life crystals. Seeing this, Yang Tian felt envious. The little blue dragon quickly tore open the carcass and found a life crystal the size of a goose egg. It directly swallowed it. The little blue dragon desired to become stronger. It obviously wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. After swallowing the life crystal, the little blue dragon turned around and fought the blue leopard with Yang Tian. The blue leopard was extremely cunning. After the little blue dragon joined the battle, it immediately turned around and fled into the distance. However, before it could run very far, an arrow suddenly flew out of nowhere and stabbed into its forehead. Afterward, a black-robed man with a bow arrived. He cut open the blue leopard's carcass with a blade and took out a silver-white life crystal. Yang Tian was very familiar with this black-robed man. He was the He Xianwen general who had tested Yang Tian in the mine. After taking the life crystal, He Xianwen general arrived before Yang Tian with a few flashes. At this moment, He Xianwen general radiated with a powerful presence. Yang Tian estimated that he was a cultivator of the illusion realm at the very least. If one was a cultivator of the illusion realm based on whether or not they had an energy world within them, then Yang Tian was one. This was because he had the origin realm within him. However, Yang Tian was only a returnance cultivator right now. He could probably only use the battle prowess of the illusion realm after breaking through to returnance. Not bad. You've actually reached returnance in such a short amount of time. Did you consume some kind of pill? He Xianwen general looked at Yang Tian and asked out of curiosity. Yang Tian did not know how to answer, so he only nodded. Work hard. I have high hopes for you. Once this battle is over, I'll take care of you. With that, He Xianwen general tossed the life crystal in his hand to the little blue dragon. Little azure dragon did not reject the life crystal. It immediately held the life crystal in its mouth, stretched its neck and swallowed it into its stomach. He Xianwen general smiled and left in a flash. After swallowing 2 life crystals, the little blue dragon's presence became chaotic. It was sometimes strong and sometimes weak. It was obvious that the little blue dragon was about to break through. Xiaolong, let's retreat, Yang Tian immediately said to the little blue dragon after glancing around. At this moment, the flying beasts in the sky had already circled above the ancestral ground. They would swoop down in groups from time to time. Many of the attacking cultivators received the order and began to retreat. Killing the beasts for life crystals was very important, but it was more important to preserve the ancestral ground. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon had just retreated to a broken wall when a red cloud suddenly appeared in the distant sky. The red cloud was extremely fast. In a few blinks of an eye, it had arrived above the ancestral ground. Seeing the red things, Yang Tian could not help but widen his eyes in shock. This was because the red cloud was actually a large group of red mechs. No, they were not mechs but machines. When he was in the mine, Yang Tian had heard the Dead by Song mention that there were machines on this continent. Yang Tian's understanding was that the machines were robots controlled by artificial intelligence. As soon as the machines arrived, they began to attack the flying beasts in the sky. Compared to the cultivators, the machines used high-tech weapons with shocking lethality. Large groups of flying beasts were killed and fell from the sky. Of course, there were also quite a few robots that fell from the sky under the attacks of the exotic beasts, smashing into the ground and exploding into fireballs like highly explosive bombs. Chapter 638. Boom. A humanoid robot that was at least 10 meters tall was carrying a mutated beast. It crashed less than 100 meters away from Yang Tian and exploded. One of the broken pieces of the robot landed less than 10 meters away from Yang Tian. Yang Tian used his spiritual power to pick up the broken piece and took it in his hand. It was a piece of red metal. It was about the size of his palm and was slightly thinner than his palm. It was very light in his hand, weighing less than 1 or 2 grams. While it was light, it was extremely tough. Yang Tian used his blade to cut it and left a shallow mark. It seemed that those gigantic robots were not as heavy as he had imagined. Just as Yang Tian was about to throw the broken piece of metal away, he suddenly realized that it was double-layered. The surface layer was extremely thin. Yang Tian used the tip of his blade to scrape off the thinnest layer, revealing the dense runes. Seeing these runes, Yang Tian's eyes widened. He did not expect that the automatons would know how to use rune technology. With the automatons joining the battle, the beast horde in the sky was quickly dispersed. After destroying the mutated beasts in the sky, the tens of thousands of automatons formed a red cloud and flew into the distance. They quickly disappeared from Yang Tian's sight. Yang Tian threw away the broken piece of metal in his hand and looked at where one of the robots had exploded. There was a huge crater there. The sand and stones on the ground were all crystallized from the high temperature of the explosion. The powerful cultivators had already pushed the battle further away from their home. It seemed that the Huier family had won this battle. His surroundings had become quiet. Yang Tian quickly stood up and walked to the edge of the crater. The explosion had created a crater that was almost 10 meters wide on the hard ground. The crater was pitch black with green smoke rising from it. It was filled with a pungent smell of burnt flesh. There were a few pieces of beast meat and some broken pieces of metal at the bottom of the crater. Yang Tian had only come over out of curiosity and wanted to take a look. Just as he was about to turn and leave, a red light suddenly shone from the bottom of the crater. Yang Tian furrowed his brows and immediately jumped to the bottom of the pit. Using his saber, he pushed aside a clump of sticky, black substance. After the surface was removed, a finger-sized red crystal-like object was revealed. What is this? Yang Tian's eyes widened. He knew that it was not a life crystal. If it were a life crystal, it would release energy waves. However, the red crystal that was the size of a fingertip did not release any energy at all. With a flash of thought, Yang Tian used his mental power to pull it out. After grabbing the red crystal, Yang Tian jumped out of the hole and returned to the wall. At that moment, the little blue dragon was lying on the ground with its eyes squinted as it digested the 2 life crystals that it had just swallowed. Judging from the energy waves emitted from the little blue dragon's body, he could tell that it was about to advance in rank. The battle prowess of the Azure Dragon at Returnance was extremely great. It was not something that Returnance beasts could compare to. The surroundings had calmed down. Many ordinary humans came out of their hiding places and searched for beast carcasses among the broken buildings. To ordinary humans, the carcasses of these beasts were food, and nutritious food at that. They did not mind the fact that these beasts had human carcasses in their stomach. Yang Tian placed the red crystal in front of his eyes and looked at it again and again. On the surface, it looked like a normal red crystal, but Yang Tian's instincts told him that it was not that simple. After some thought, Yang Tian used a sliver of his mental power to enter the red crystal. Suddenly, Yang Tian's eyes widened. What appeared in his vision were countless densely packed threads of various colors. There was a red ball hanging from each of these threads at certain intervals. It was because of the existence of these red balls that the crystal looked red. This should be the brain of a mechanical life. At that moment, the voice of the strange program rang out in Yang Tian's head. Yang Tian nodded and continued to use his mental power to enter the crystal. At that moment, Yang Tian's mental power had only stopped at the surface of the crystal. When Yang Tian's mental power entered the center of the red crystal and saw what was inside, he was shocked once again. This was because a formation disk composed of countless runes floated in the center of the crystal. Within the formation disk was a naked, beautiful woman with long red hair. Her eyes were closed as she lay in the center of the disk. She seemed to be asleep. There was actually a human in the brain of a mechanical life. Could it be, just as Yang Tian was guessing, the beautiful young woman lying on the disk suddenly opened her eyes. She seemed to have sensed that some kind of energy had intruded into this world that belonged to her. The beautiful woman who woke up sat up and looked around again and again. Although she sensed that something had intruded into this world, she was unable to see it. Out of curiosity, Yang Tian used his mental power to create a shape and appeared before the beautiful woman. "Who are you?" Seeing Yang Tian appear in front of her, the beautiful woman asked with a frown. She also spoke in the human language, which made Yang Tian feel that his previous guess was more accurate. "I'm a human. What about you?" Yang Tian asked with a smile. To the beautiful woman, Yang Tian's answer and question were a little strange. For a moment, the beautiful woman did not know how to answer Yang Tian's question. Yang Tian continued, "The mechanical life was originally human, right? In order to have powerful abilities, you transferred your consciousness into the machine. This way, you can perfectly control powerful machines." After Yang Tian finished speaking, the beautiful woman could not help but laugh and say, "You're only half right. In fact, we should be considered half human. We've never really had a physical body like yours in this world." "What do you mean?" Yang Tian asked. The beautiful woman said, "We were all born in a virtual world. Like you, we were born as children and slowly grew up. In that world, we can live like you humans who have physical bodies, experience all kinds of things, feel happiness and experience pain. If we didn't know that we're just programmed life forms and that the world is illusory, it would be even more perfect. In order to see this real world, we used machines to come to this world. Through machines, we communicate and fight with you. The reason why we're called half-human is that our ancestors were humans. Before our physical bodies died, our ancestors transferred their consciousness into what you call the virtual world to continue living. In this virtual world, we can also reproduce. In fact, this is another way for life to evolve. We're of the same origin, aren't we?" "I see." Yang Tian nodded. The beautiful woman sized up Yang Tian and asked, "How did you enter this world?" Chapter 639. "How did you enter this world?" asked the automaton beauty. Yang Tian smiled. "Have you heard of spirit power?" The beauty nodded and smiled. "It's nice to meet you. I'm Mansi. What about you?" "Yang Tian," answered Yang Tian. "I hope to see you again in the future." With that, Mansi's figure faded and disappeared into the rune formation. The rune formation she was in not only had the function of preserving consciousness, but it also had the function of teleportation. When Mansi was being teleported, Yang Tian felt a powerful suction force. If he had not tried his best to control it, this sliver of spirit power with consciousness would have been teleported away with Mansi. Yang Tian guessed that Mansi had been teleported back to the huge virtual world. After Mansi left, Yang Tian withdrew his consciousness from the red crystal. Looking at the red crystal in his hand, Yang Tian let out a long sigh. Originally, he thought that the automatons were purely intelligent machines like Bell. However, that was not the case. The automatons were essentially humans, but they had the consciousness of humans and the bodies of machines. After a long time, the automatons were like humans, beasts, and other races. They had become a unique life form in this world. After putting the red crystal into his storage bracelet, Yang Tian began to pay attention to the little blue dragon. It seemed like only a short time had passed since he entered the red crystal world, but it had actually been almost 20 minutes. The little blue dragon had almost completely digested the energy of the two life crystals. Yang Tian waited for more than 10 minutes before the little blue dragon's body emitted a powerful energy wave. It then weakened and gradually stabilized. The little blue dragon had finally reached the returnance realm. The reason why it was so fast was because the little blue dragon was the same as Yang Tian. It was lacking in energy. If it had enough energy, it would be able to level up quickly just like in the previous universe. Roar! The little blue dragon, who had become even more powerful, let out a deep roar. It was filled with battle intent. Yang Tian immediately jumped onto the little blue dragon's back. The little blue dragon carried Yang Tian and quickly flew above the beast horde. The man and dragon once again joined the battle of hunting exotic beasts. A few minutes later, Yang Tian encountered a massive bian. This was a beast at peak returnance. It was even more powerful than the one Yang Tian had slain before. Earlier, Yang Tian had used a special method to temporarily increase his battle prowess in order to cleave the young beast in two. But now, he couldn't. This guy's speed was comparable to Lan Bao's, and his strength was even stronger than Lan Bao's. In less than a minute, Yang Tian's arm had been scratched open by the nightmare beast's claws. The little blue dragon, who had been eyeing them covetously, seized the opportunity and rushed forward. Boom! The little azure dragon, which had grown larger in its resting form, opened its mouth and spat out a stream of pale golden dragon flames at the black nightmare beast. After reaching returnance, the little blue dragon could spit out dragon flames once more. Roar! The nightmare beast, enveloped by the golden dragon flames, let out a miserable cry. It charged out of the flames and slammed into a huge boulder. Bang! A loud sound was heard. The boulder that weighed several tons was smashed to smithereens. From the looks of it, its eyes had been burned, and it had lost its ability to see. The little azure dragon quickly rushed down, opened its mouth, and bit down on the beast's back. It directly lifted up the 1,000-pound beast and shook its head. Poof! A sound was heard. A large piece of the nightmare beast's back had been torn off by the little blue dragon. Blood splattered everywhere. This was far too savage. The nightmare beast, which had lost its spine, had lost its ability to fight. Yang Tian flashed forward and slashed the nightmare beast's head to end its pain. Following this, Yang Tian cut open the nightmare beast's chest and picked out a silvery white life crystal the size of a goose egg. Following this, Yang Tian took out a bag used to store miscellaneous items from his storage bracelet. He put the life crystal into the bag and tied it to his waist. Yang Tian naturally did not want to hand over the life crystal that he had obtained with great difficulty. However, he had no choice but to do so in this situation. After putting away the life crystal, the little blue dragon flew into the sky and continued to search for its next target. The exotic beasts that the little blue dragon was searching for were all at returnance. It was not difficult to defeat such exotic beasts. It could kill them in a few minutes and obtain the life crystal. Yang Tian and the little blue dragon stayed far away from the more powerful exotic beasts. A few hours later, a large number of powerful exotic beasts were slain. Another howl that seemed to belong to a beast king rang out in the distance. With this howl, the swarm of exotic beasts immediately dispersed and returned the way they had come. Very soon, they fled into the distant wilderness. The beast wave this time had finally come to an end. Seeing that there were no more exotic beasts in the surroundings, the little blue dragon turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. Yang Tian carried the 3 bags and made his way back to the clan. At this moment, all the returnance cultivators returned in 2s and 3s, aside from the cultivators from the illusion world who continued to pursue the fleeing exotic beasts and increase their harvest. The hunt for powerful exotic beasts this time was not an easy matter. A large number of returnance cultivators had been devoured by the exotic beasts. Although the cultivators who returned were filled with joy from their harvest, they were unable to hide their exhaustion. "You stop right there!" As soon as Yang Tian passed through the gap in the first wall, a cold voice rang out from beside him. Yang Tian turned his head and saw a black-robed young man with a group of subordinates stop a cultivator who had just returned. The person who had been stopped was a skinny, white-robed middle-aged man. He was a returnance cultivator. After fighting exotic beasts for so long, his white robes were covered in black blood. The black-robed young man was not even at returnance. Even though that was the case, the cultivators all feared the black-robed young man very much. They all avoided him when they saw him. Ah! So its 16th elder, the white-robed middle-aged man, smiled when he saw the black-robed young man. The smile on his face was extremely ugly. Elder was a form of address, just like Mr. on Earth and Sir in his original world. Judging from the white-robed middle-aged man's attitude towards the black-robed young man, his status in the Hui clan was very high. "What are you carrying in your hands?" 16th elder glanced at the two bulging bags on the white-robed middle-aged man's waist and asked with a smile. These are life crystals." The white-robed middle-aged man smiled awkwardly. "Life crystals." 16th elder paused and glanced at one of his subordinate. The subordinate immediately arrived before the white-robed middle-aged man and took away one of the bags. The white-robed middle-aged man did not do anything during this process. He just watched as the half of the life crystals he had risked his life for was taken away. After returning, he would have to hand over the other half, which was equivalent to a quarter of what he had obtained. It was a great loss. Chapter 640. After taking a leather pouch, 16 waved his hand at the middle-aged man in the white robe, asking him to leave. The middle-aged man in the white robe sighed helplessly and shook his head slightly. He turned around and walked towards the center of the clanland. After the monster horde subsided, the fifth wall and the few walls behind it were lowered. Seeing this, Yang Tian understood that he could not afford to offend 16. It was best to stay away from him. Although Yang Tian did not want to provoke 16th elder happened to see him at this moment. Yang Tian was very eye-catching as his clothes were messy and his body was covered in black scabs formed from blood. However, the pouch on his waist was red. He had obtained 3 huge red pouches full of life crystals. With the help of the little blue dragon, Yang Tian had obtained more life crystals. He had obtained at least 30 silver-white life crystals. Although they were the lowest level of silver-white life crystals, they were considered very rich for a returnance cultivator. "You! Stop right there!" 16 stopped Yang Tian just like how he stopped the middle-aged man in the white robe earlier. Yang Tian glanced at 16th Duke from the corner of his eyes before he continued to walk forward. At that moment, 16 and the rest were about 50 meters away from Yang Tian. After the monster horde subsided, Karcha walked out to see if Yang Tian was still alive. At this moment, he happened to see this scene. Just as he was about to greet Yang Tian, he had no choice but to stop. Karcha had stayed in the clan land for a long time, so he knew that 16 was not to be trifled with. At that moment, he could not help but worry about Yang Tian. Although he had not known Yang Tian for long, Karcha knew that Yang Tian was very stubborn. He was a person who could be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force. At that moment, Karcha was hoping that Yang Tian would give in. He pretended to ignore me. Go. When 16 saw that Yang Tian did not stop, he immediately ordered his subordinate. Although 16 elders were not returnance cultivators, there were 2 returnance cultivators among his subordinates. With an order, the 2 of them arrived 20 meters away from Yang Tian in a flash, blocking his path. To the cultivators who didn't greet each other, this was a safe distance. Any closer and it would be a declaration of war. Yang Tian had no choice but to stop. At this time, it was already too late to avoid trouble. Yang Tian, on the other hand, regretted stopping here for too long. Curiosity really killed the cat. After the 2 returnance cultivators stopped Yang Tian, the other subordinates surrounded Yang Tian. The 16 heads slowly made his way through the rubble from the collapsed wall. He arrived before the 2 returnance subordinates and stopped. "Hey, what's your name? Why do you want to run as soon as you see me?" The 16 heads asked Yang Tian proudly after stopping. Yang Tian glanced at his surroundings and saw many people looking at them from a distance away. Just like Yang Tian, they were here to enjoy the show. Yang Tian. Yang Tian reported his name and continued, "It's because I obtained these life crystals with great difficulty. I don't want you to take advantage of me." Most of the 16 heads' subordinates carried bags in their hands. It seemed like many of them had fallen for Yang Tian's trick before he arrived. Yang Tian was telling the truth. The 16 heads could not help but widen his eyes when he heard that. This was the first time he had heard someone say something so honest in front of him. "Since you know, then leave behind 1 bag, no, 2 bags of life crystals and piss off." The 16 heads sneered after being stunned for a moment. Yang Tian shook his head. "These are the fruits of my labor. I can't give them to you. Do you know? What you're doing is wrong. Even if you're the son of the Hui family leader, you shouldn't do that because it'll tarnish the family leader's reputation. If you're not the family leader's son, what you're doing is even more wrong because your father isn't the most powerful person in the family. What you're doing will bring trouble to your family. Shut up." Before Yang Tian could finish his sentence, the 16 heads raised his hand to stop Yang Tian from continuing. To the 16 heads, what Yang Tian said sounded like he was being lectured. Yang Tian shut his mouth. The 16 heads were still very young. He glared at Yang Tian coldly and was so angry that he was speechless. Nobody had ever lectured him like that since he was young. "I'm Yang Tian," Yang Tian said coldly, "but I don't know who you are. May I know who you are?" The 16 heads is the 16th son of the Hui family's 3rd elder. His name is Hui Taichung, one of the 16 heads' underlings said as soon as Yang Tian finished his sentence. After the underling reported the 16 heads' identity and name, the 16 heads snorted coldly with an arrogant expression. Yang Tian smiled. "So, you're the 16th son of the 3rd elder. My apologies. No, there's nothing about you that can make others respect you. Those cultivators who left their life crystals weren't afraid of you. They just didn't want to offend your father. If your father wasn't the 3rd elder but a normal cultivator, heh?" After Yang Tian finished speaking, he walked to the side. One of the 16 heads' underlings immediately went forward and stopped Yang Tian. "Pung!" Yang Tian raised his leg and kicked the underling into the air until he landed at least 10 meters away. After he landed on the ground, the underling clutched his stomach and cried out in pain. "Kill him! The 2 of you, kill him!" Seeing this, the 16 heads became furious as he pointed at Yang Tian and roared. Whoosh! Whoosh! 2 gusts of wind could be heard. The 2 underlings of the 16 heads moved and charged at Yang Tian with the whistling of the wind. They were going to fight again. The little blue dragon's eyes were filled with battle intent. It immediately flew into the air and transformed into a huge dragon. With the little blue dragon around, Yang Tian was not afraid of facing 2 returnants cultivators at the same time. After settling this matter and digesting the life crystals that he had obtained, Yang Tian would be able to upgrade to the illusion realm after settling down. Once he entered this realm, he would be at the pinnacle of the illusion realm. Whoosh! Seeing the 2 of them charging at him, Yang Tian's figure flashed. He swung his sword and slashed at one of them with a red wind blade. The other party was agile and dodged to the side before the sword aura even reached him. Hiss! At the same time, a black thread sliced at Yang Tian. The other cultivator attacked Yang Tian. The black thread was very strange. Not only was it fast, but when it flew it was like a snake. It moved in a curved path, sometimes up, sometimes down, sometimes left, and sometimes right. It was difficult to dodge. Yang Tian was just about to use his mind power to block the attack when he heard a boom above his head. A scorching aura surged toward him. It turned out that the little blue dragon had spat out a dragon flame. The black thread was burned by the dragon flame and lit up like a light bulb. It turned out to be a type of metal thread. Because the dragon flame was too hot, the heat was transmitted to the hand of the person using the thread. Feeling the scorching energy, the person attacking Yang Tian with the thread had no choice but to throw away the strange weapon. Stop! The other person was about to charge at Yang Tian when a powerful shout suddenly rang out. Before the voice had even finished, a middle-aged man in red robes with silver hair appeared to the side. When Hui Yi Taichung's subordinates saw this person, they immediately stopped and dodged to the side. Then, they lowered their heads, not daring to look at the middle-aged man. "Father!" Hui Yi Taichung called out to the middle-aged man with silver hair. The voice made Yang Tian's teeth ache. As it turned out, the middle-aged man with silver hair was the third elder of the Hui Yi clan. Chapter 641. Once you return, you're not allowed to come out until you've reached returnance. The third elder glanced at his son with a frown and said nonchalantly. "Ah!" Hui Yi Taichung cried out in surprise. He said, "Father, I haven't done anything wrong. There's no need for this, right?" "Yeah." The third elder nodded. He looked at Hui Yi Taichung and his gaze sharpened. "All right." Hui Yi Taichung lowered his head helplessly. 16th Elder, let's go. At this moment, one of Hui Yi Taichung's close subordinates arrived before him and whispered into his ear. Actually, the people who feared the third elder the most were Hui Yi Taichung's subordinates. Hui Yi Taichung nodded. He looked at Yang Tian and sneered. "I'll remember you. Just you wait." With that, Hui Yi Taichung left with his subordinate. Yang Tian squinted his eyes at Hui Yi Taichung's threat. Yang Tian hated it when people threatened him right now. After Hui Yi Taichung left, the third elder glanced at Yang Tian deeply. He said nothing and left in a flash as well. Perhaps this was only a small matter to the third elder. He had just happened to pass by. Now that the beast wave had just passed, there were many things he had to deal with. Ka Cha could not help but let out a sigh of relief for Yang Tian after the third elder left. When the third elder had arrived, he had been worried for Yang Tian. It had to be mentioned that the elders possessed great authority in the clan. If the third elder used an excuse to kill Yang Tian, no one would say anything. The little blue dragon turned back into a mini dragon and landed on Yang Tian's shoulder. Ka Cha quickly walked over. "Yang Tian, I was so worried before," Ka Cha said with lingering fear after arriving before Yang Tian. "Are the people of the three elders very bad?" Yang Tian asked. Facing Yang Tian's question, Ka Cha looked around and whispered to Yang Tian, "They don't look bad on the surface, but the things they do are 100 times worse than the bad guys. You should understand." Yang Tian nodded. Indeed, they had sacrificed so many ordinary humans just to obtain a large number of life crystals. If Yang Tian was in that position, he would never be able to do it. Let's go. There were still many things to be done. You're a returnance cultivator now. The higher-ups will definitely give you an independent courtyard. Do you lack a housekeeper? Ka Cha said to Yang Tian with a smile. Yang Tian smiled and said, "Don't worry. I won't leave you alone." Ka Cha chuckled as he was so happy. Although Ka Cha didn't have much talent in cultivation, he was very smart. He knew he couldn't do it, so he had to find a backer. This was not the first time Ka Cha treated a newcomer the same way he treated Yang Tian after so many years. However, those people didn't have Yang Tian's talent. At the beginning, they seemed to be very powerful, but then they slowly fell silent. Or when they succeeded in cultivation and rose to a higher position than Ka Cha, they forgot about Ka Cha. Ka Cha was very familiar with the internal affairs of the clan. He brought Yang Tian to the clan's management office and handed over half of his life crystals. With the help of the little blue dragon, Yang Tian obtained a total of 36 life crystals. After handing over half, there were still 18 left. Yang Tian saw a pile of silvery white life crystals that looked like a small hill in the management office. These lowest-level life crystals were casually piled together as if they weren't valued. Besides the silver-white life crystals, There were also black and gold life crystals. The black and gold life crystals were stored in silver-white metal boxes. There weren't many of them. Different levels of life crystals would definitely have different colors. Without Ka Cha's explanation, Yang Tian could roughly determine the level of these life crystals from the energy waves they emitted. The silver-white life crystals were the lowest level of origin-level life crystals. Before coming to this world, the life crystal that Yang Tian obtained from killing the mutated beast was origin level. Perhaps it was because the world was different, the shape of the life crystal in the mutated beast's body had changed. The life crystal that was one level higher than the silver-white life crystal was black, which was the fantasy level life crystal. The next level was the gold life crystal, which was the enlightenment level life crystal. As for the higher level life crystals, Yang Tian didn't find any in the management office. Seeing the black and gold life crystals, the little blue dragon's eyes were filled with desire. However, it knew that if it didn't care about the consequences of snatching these life crystals, it would be in big trouble. In the end, the little blue dragon's rationality won over its desire to devour the life crystals. The dragon's saliva that flowed out made Yang Tian's shoulder wet. After handing over 18 life crystals, Yang Tian, who was heartbroken, put the rest of the life crystals into his storage bracelet. Fortunately, the 2 life crystals that the little blue dragon had swallowed were not included in the storage bracelet. Under such circumstances, it was impossible for the Hui family to keep an eye on every cultivator. Ka Cha, bring me to other places. After leaving the management office, Yang Tian said to Ka Cha with a smile. Ka Cha immediately nodded and said, "There are only a few places that people can visit. Let me bring you to the temple." Temple? Is there a temple in the family land? Yang Tian asked curiously. Ka Cha said, "Every family land has a temple. You'll know when you see it." About half an hour later, Yang Tian stood in front of a grand building under Ka Cha's guidance. The building wasn't tall, and its shape was similar to the Confucius temple that Yang Tian had seen in the cities on Earth. Although the building wasn't tall, it occupied a large area. In front of the temple, there were 2 strange human statues with wings, wearing loose robes and holding tridents. What are these? Yang Tian looked at the 2 statues and asked Ka Cha curiously. Ka Cha said, "These are the servants of the gods. I've never seen the divine servants of the gods. However, I heard that the patriarch of the Hui family had seen the divine servants in their true form." The beast tide had just passed, so the temple seemed very deserted. After Ka Cha finished speaking, he led Yang Tian past the 2 statues and up the stone steps to the main entrance. There were 2 rows of guards on both sides of the main entrance. These guards were very strong and wore gorgeous golden armor. Although they looked mighty and domineering, it was only for show because they weren't cultivators. Ka Cha didn't pay attention to these guards and led Yang Tian through the wide temple gate. "Get out!" Just as he stepped over the high threshold, a cold shout came from the side. Yang Tian turned his head and saw a middle-aged man wearing a white robe holding a carving knife and carving a statue. Seeing this statue, Yang Tian opened his eyes wide. Because this unfinished statue was unexpectedly Qin Fei's appearance when she left. What's going on? A big question mark appeared in Yang Tian's mind. Ka Cha didn't see Yang Tian's appearance. At this time, he smiled at the middle-aged man and said, "We just came to take a look, we'll leave once we're done." The middle-aged man frowned. "You're too dirty. Wash up and then come back." Only then did Yang Tian react. Indeed, he was too dirty and had a strange smell on his body. Hearing the middle-aged man's words, he felt uncomfortable all over and wanted to take a bath. Ka Cha wasn't much better than Yang Tian. P.S. More updates tomorrow. The updates will be faster. Chapter 642. Although the white-robed middle-aged man didn't look like a cultivator, they couldn't feel the slightest bit of energy fluctuation from his body. Yang Tian and Ka Cha looked at each other and could only leave the temple. Ka Cha took Yang Tian to a bathhouse not far from the temple. They washed themselves from head to toe and changed into clean clothes before coming out of the bathhouse. 2 people and a dragon washed themselves clean before entering the temple. What surprised Yang Tian was that the white-robed middle-aged man they saw before had already finished carving the statue. The completed statue was twice the size of a real person and looked exactly the same as Qin Fei. There was a red dot between the eyebrows. The statue was in a standing posture, holding a staff in its right hand and raising its left hand to form an orchid shape. A round ball was floating above the left hand, emitting waves of rune energy fluctuation. In addition to this statue, there were dozens of other statues in the temple. Each of them was twice the size of a real person and looked extremely lifelike. However, none of the statues were as lifelike as the one depicting Qin Fei. Yang Tian looked at this statue and was stunned for a long time. He felt that the real Qin Fei was standing in front of him. Thinking back to the meeting with Qin Fei in the Divine Palace, it felt like it had happened yesterday. The white-robed middle-aged man looked at the statue with somewhat blurred eyes. When Yang Tian and Ka Cha arrived behind him, he didn't seem to notice. Ka Cha also opened his eyes wide and looked at the statue. For a moment, he was also immersed in it. Cough, cough. Yang Tian was the first to wake up. He deliberately coughed twice. The white-robed middle-aged man and Ka Cha woke up from their daze. Perfect. It's really perfect. Ha ha. The white-robed middle-aged man said and laughed loudly. Yang Tian frowned. The white-robed middle-aged man laughed for a long time. After he stopped, he said, "In this life, I can't carve such a good work again. I have decided to seal the knife." After saying this, a snap sound was heard. The white-robed middle-aged man broke the carving knife in his hand. After destroying the knife, the white-robed middle-aged man turned around and walked out of the temple. Yang Tian immediately flashed and blocked the white-robed middle-aged man's path. Being blocked by Yang Tian, the white-robed middle-aged man frowned and said indifferently, "What do you want?" Yang Tian said with a smile, "Great Master, I just have a few questions to ask you." Seeing that Yang Tian didn't have any hostility, the white-robed middle-aged man said indifferently. Yang Tian said, "I would like to ask, who is this statue that you just sculpted?" The white-robed middle-aged man said, "The statues placed in the temple depiction of gods. This deity is a newly ascended deity." "Then where is she?" Yang Tian asked nervously. "After coming to this world worlds is a god two's back." The white-robed middle-aged man said, "Tiant s to God. Ka to head to have s to." The white-robed middle-aged man laughed. "Of course not." After saying that, seeing the doubtful look in Yang Tian's eyes, the white-robed middle-aged man said, "But I've seen her. She's the most beautiful god I've ever seen. Although I only saw her once, she was deeply imprinted in my mind." After saying that, the white-robed middle-aged man's eyes became confused again, as if he was recalling the situation back then. Yang Tian asked again, "Then, how do I get to that continent?" The white-robed middle-aged man came back to his senses and sized up Yang Tian. He said in a disdainful tone, "With just you, don't even think about it. To get to that continent, you'll have to cross the boundless sea of stars. There are countless powerful demon beasts in the sea of stars. Apart from gods, no one can cross it. There's no teleportation array between this continent and that continent." After saying that, the white-robed middle-aged man didn't want to talk nonsense with Yang Tian anymore. His body turned into a white shadow and disappeared in a flash. Ka Cha saw this and cried out in surprise. He didn't expect that this white-robed middle-aged man, who looked like an ordinary human, was actually a very powerful cultivator. Yang Tian didn't find it strange. This was completely within his expectations. After being stunned for a moment, Yang Tian gritted his teeth and said, "Xiao Long, we must cross that sea of stars." The little blue dragon immediately nodded. Its eyes were also filled with determination. After receiving some news about Qin Fei, Yang Tian seemed to be calm. But in fact, he was even more worried for Qin Fei. The god that descended on Qin Fei's body didn't seem to have left Qin Fei's body. Yang Tian wasn't interested in the other statues in the temple and immediately left the temple. Yang Tian, what's wrong? After leaving the temple and walking for a while, Ka Cha saw that something was wrong with Yang Tian and quickly asked. Yang Tian smiled and shook his head. Nothing. If Yang Tian didn't want to say, Ka Cha didn't ask. However, he saw that Yang Tian was so sensitive to the statue and guessed that Yang Tian had some relationship with that god. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, Ka Cha rejected it. Yang Tian was just an ordinary cultivator. How could he have any relationship with a god? Yang Tian was walking aimlessly when suddenly, He Xianwen appeared in front of Yang Tian again. After seeing Yang Tian, He Xianwen walked straight to Yang Tian. Yang Tian immediately went to greet him. Before Yang Tian could speak, He Xianwen smiled and asked, Yang Tian, are you interested in working at the rune department? What kind of place is the rune department? Yang Tian asked. He Xianwen said, it's the place where the Hui race manages the runes and makes rune arrays and rune mechanisms. I think you're very suitable. Let me tell you, the treatment in the rune department is very good and it's very easy. The rune department is directly responsible to the chief. If your rune skills are high, you'll definitely be valued by the chief. Your future will be limitless. When He Xianwen said this, Yang Tian could guess what kind of organization the rune department was. It was a place that dealt with runes all day long. Now that the clan's land was in ruins, there would be a lot of work to do. However, after this period of work, it would be very easy. After thinking for a while, Yang Tian didn't agree or refuse. Instead, he asked He Xianwen, is there a better place than the rune department? Don't misunderstand. I mean it can help my cultivation level improve faster. When Yang Tian said this, He Xianwen frowned. He suddenly felt that Yang Tian was a little arrogant. He had his eyes on Yang Tian's talent in runes. Increase your cultivation level as fast as possible. There's a place that I'm not sure if you're up for it. When He Xianwen said this, his tone became a little cold. Please go ahead, Yang Tian said with a smile. He Xianwen said, the hunting department that specializes in eliminating exotic beasts. Although the beast tide has passed, there are still many powerful exotic beasts outside the clan's land that pose a threat. This requires the hunting department to eliminate them. Other than this, the higher-ups often give the hunting department special missions. Other than hunting exotic beasts, they also have to deal with other cultivators. They even have to go to dangerous places to search for secret. The people of the hunting department often have to go to very far places, such as the Sand region and the Frost region outside the Yen region. Although the cultivators of the hunting department receive great rewards, they are always in danger. For so many years, other than the higher-ups of the fierce hunting department, very few people have been able to escape unscathed. After saying this, He Xianwen looked at Yang Tian with a cold smile and said, do you want to go to such a place? When He Xianwen finished speaking, Yang Tian said, you said it's dangerous, but what about the benefits? I don't think I need to join the hunting department. I can hunt exotic beasts or explore secret areas by myself, right? When Yang Tian said this, He Xianwen snorted coldly and said, if you don't have your family to provide you with relevant information, you are a blind man in this world. Benefits? Every mission has great rewards. It's up to you whether you dare to accept it or not. Yang Tian thought for a while and said resolutely, fine. I'll go to the hunting department. Yang Tian felt that this way of cultivation was the most suitable for him. Ever since he became an enhancer, he had always been like this. Going to the rune department was equivalent to retiring. Chapter 643. Since you've already decided, I won't force you. The beast tide has just passed and the hunting division hasn't recruited anyone yet. You can go to the rune division to help out. What do you think? He Xianwen asked after a moment of silence. If Yang Tian were to refuse again, then he would be ignorant of the situation. Without any hesitation, he nodded his head and agreed. He Xianwen smiled. Come with me. The clan grounds have been severely damaged and many of the rune mechanisms can't be used anymore. They have to be redesigned and repaired. After every beast tide, the rune masters are the busiest, He Xianwen said as he walked. Yang Tian listened and nodded from time to time. Going to the rune division for a period of time wasn't a permanent job. Helping out a little was nothing. He Xianwen didn't head toward the center of the clan grounds. Instead, he headed toward the periphery. Soon, they walked past the area where the fifth protective wall had been. The area beyond the fifth protective wall was the most severely damaged area. After arriving at this area, all he could see was a miserable scene. The injured people were basically missing an arm or a leg. There were also some who were on the verge of death. Yang Tian could only hear the mournful cries of the relatives of the deceased and the wails of the injured. Almost all of them were ordinary humans. Seeing this, Yang Tian's brows furrowed even tighter. He Xianwen turned to look at Yang Tian. He knew what Yang Tian was thinking and said, "Don't think that the Hui clan doesn't care about them. They can't take care of them at all. There are simply too many of them. A long time ago, some of the clans that came to this wilderness to build their clan grounds mobilized their cultivators when the beast tide arrived. They moved the ordinary humans to the center of the clan grounds. Guess what happened?" He Xianwen stopped and turned to look at Yang Tian after he finished speaking. Yang Tian shook his head. He Xianwen said, "The result was that both the cultivators and the ordinary humans were all killed. Every beast tide is a battle between humans and the mutated beasts. There is a lot of strategy involved. If the cultivators were to blend in with the ordinary humans, they would not be able to unleash their strongest combat power because they were afraid of accidentally injuring others. If the ordinary humans were to gather at the center of the clan grounds while the cultivators were to defend the perimeter, the situation would be even worse. That's because cultivators are all selfish. I don't have to explain it in detail. You should be able to understand." He Xianwen was most likely telling the truth, but Yang Tian could not accept it. If he were to build his clan's land, he would never allow ordinary humans to serve as cannon fodder. He would build the clan's land so that even high-level beasts couldn't invade it. If he couldn't do that, he wouldn't have built such a city-like building complex to gather a large number of people and wait for the beast horde to attack. The repair work of the Hui family had already begun. At the first protective wall, a large number of ordinary humans who had survived were gathered together to repair the protective wall. "General Wen, long time no see." A red-robed old man saw He Xianwen and walked over. He smiled and greeted He Xianwen. "Lord Tai Xian, the rune department is still short of manpower, right? I've brought you someone." He Xianwen pointed at Yang Tian and introduced him to the black-robed old man. The red-robed old man had long silver hair and looked to be about 60 years old. The energy waves emitted from his body weren't any weaker than He Xianwen's. The strange program informed Yang Tian that this old man had a rune treasure on him. In Yang Tian's original universe, rune treasures were extremely rare. However, in this world they were very common tools. During the battle with the beast horde, Yang Tian had seen many cultivators using rune treasures to attack the beast. However, the rune treasures that Yang Tian had seen weren't very powerful. They were only slightly stronger than ordinary weapons. While Yang Tian was sizing up the red-robed old man, the red-robed old man was naturally sizing up Yang Tian as well. After carefully sizing up Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, the red-robed old man smiled and turned to He Xianwen. "Don't tell me you want me to take him as a disciple?" He Xianwen shook his head. No, I saw that he had some talent in runes and called him over to help you. After that, he will go to the hunting department. The red-robed old man nodded. I'm short of manpower. Thank you. He Xianwen then said to Yang Tian, this is one of the managers of the rune department, Zhang Taixian. Lord Taixian, hello. My name is Yang Tian. Yang Tian said with a smile. The red-robed old man didn't pay much attention to Yang Tian. After Yang Tian finished speaking, Zhang Taixian pulled He Xianwen to the side and talked for a few minutes. Yang Tian heard the two of them talking about their harvest this time, how much louse medicine they could exchange for, and so on. Louse medicine, this name came from louse crystals. It was a kind of pill that could be consumed directly to replenish energy and be used for cultivation. Louse crystals could only be refined into pure energy in a special way. Life crystals weren't very effective for cultivators to consume directly. These two things, along with some other herbs, would be made into louse medicine. This way, the energy could be maximized and not wasted. Louse medicine was a necessity for cultivators in this world. Yang Tian had heard of louse medicine from Karcha before. However, for someone of Karcha's status, it was like a mortal hearing about immortal pills. He had only heard of it, but had never seen it before. Yang Tian, I think that the hunting department should go to the hunting department. It's best if you stay in the runes department and join the hunting division, because it's too dangerous. Karcha glanced at He Xianwen and Zhang Taixian and whispered to Yang Tian. Yang Tian just shook his head and didn't say anything. Since he had made a decision, how could he change it so easily? Yang Tian had made this decision after some consideration, not because he was hot-headed. He Xianwen and Zhang Taixian finished their conversation, nodded to Yang Tian and turned to leave. Zhang Taixian came to Yang Tian and asked, "What level of talisman master are you?" "What level of talisman master?" Yang Tian didn't know how to answer this question. He could only shake his head. "It seems that you don't know much about runes," Zhang Taixian said as he took out a folded drawing from his storage bracelet and handed it to Yang Tian. "You should know how to do it. This is a simplified design of the clan's defensive formation. I've marked some data on it. Make a purchase form according to the data on it. Can you do this?" Yang Tian took the design and nodded. Seeing Yang Tian take the drawing, Zhang Taixian turned around and led a group of men to patrol around the first broken wall, leaving Yang Tian behind. Obviously, Zhang Taixian was sending Yang Tian away. Because Yang Tian was too young. He didn't look like a person with attainments in talisman Taoism. At most, he could read some simple runes. The youngest of Zhang Taixian's men was middle-aged, and there were even some who looked older than Zhang Taixian. In the final analysis, runes were a technical thing. Without years of study, one could not be proficient in it. Yang Tian was not proficient in runes, but Yang Tian had a strange program. After Zhang Taixian left with a group of people, Yang Tian unfolded the drawing. The drawing was yellow and white, made of special materials. It was very thin and very large when unfolded. After finding an open space, Yang Tian fully unfolded the drawing with the help of the little blue dragon and Kacha. It was a large drawing with a square side of 10 meters. Although the drawing was large, the lines on it were very thin and numerous. There were also many tiny runes. Yang Tian felt a headache and his eyes were sore. He couldn't understand it at all. Fortunately, he had the strange program. The strange program simulated the contents of the drawing in Yang Tian's mind, forming a very intuitive three-dimensional drawing. "Manager, what you gave to that person is the main defense drawing, right? He's just a young boy. How can he understand it? You're making things difficult for him, aren't you?" After walking for some distance, one of Zhang Taixian's men said with a smile. Zhang Taixian nodded. "I want to make things difficult for him and make him disappear on his own. You can't enter the rune division by connections. As soon as he finished, Zhang Taishuan's men nodded repeatedly. It seemed that Zhang Taishian regarded Yang Tian as a backdoor entrant. He couldn't refuse He Xian General directly, so he had to trouble Yang Tian. Chapter 644. The more Yang Tian looked at it, the clearer the 3D image in his mind became. The lines on the diagram were very messy and densely packed. If one wasn't the person who drew the diagram, it would be very difficult to understand what these lines represented. The strange program was different. It was essentially an intelligent program with super computing power. Plus, it was constructed from runes, so this kind of diagram wasn't difficult for it at all. It could even be said to be simple. Truly amazing. Yang Tian sighed as he looked at the 3D image in his mind. In terms of manpower, the rune array system covering the clan land was simply exquisite to the extreme, taking care of every aspect. At least from Yang Tian's point of view, that was the case. But it was different for the strange program. Yang Tian had just exclaimed in his mind when the program said, "In fact, it's very bad. At least 60% of the energy is wasted, and the power of the rune array is only 50% of the ideal state." The strange program listed a large number of shortcomings in Yang Tian's mind. After the program finished, Yang Tian couldn't help but smile and ask, "If you were to design it, these problems could be avoided, right?" The program said, "Of course." While Yang Tian was talking to the strange program, he walked around the blueprint with a serious expression on his face. Karcha couldn't understand the diagram, so he curiously stared at Yang Tian's face, wanting to see something from Yang Tian's face. He naturally hoped that Yang Tian could complete Purple Sun Taishian's mission and let Yang Tian receive the attention of the Rune Division. This was not only beneficial to Yang Tian but also to him, because as long as Yang Tian's status rose, he would be able to take care of him. Kacha could see that Yang Tian was a person who placed great importance on friendship. When Yang Tian withdrew his gaze from the diagram, Karcha hurriedly asked, "How is it?" Yang Tian smiled and said, "No problem. According to the diagram's information, the damage situation, and the list of materials needed to repair the rune array, the strange program had already calculated. It really wasn't difficult for the program. However, in order to perfect this kind of talisman array, the strange program needed more talisman information. The more rune information the strange program obtained, the more powerful it would become. This was also what the strange program hoped for. Yang Tian decided that he had to impress Zhang Taishian in order to complete the strange program and strengthen the clan's land so that fewer people would die in the next beast tide. "Do you have a pen and paper?" Yang Tian raised his head and asked Karcha after a moment of silence. Karcha nodded and immediately took out a palm-sized notebook and a pen from his storage ring. Yang Tian looked at the pen and paper and felt very satisfied. Next, the strange program narrated in his mind and Yang Tian wrote it down. At this moment, Yang Tian thought of the dead by song. He thought that it would be great if the old man didn't die. He could think of a way to get him out of the mine. There were a lot of materials needed to build a rune array. Yang Tian had never heard of many of the materials listed by the strange program. After spending more than half an hour, Yang Tian finally finished writing. There were more than 10 pages in the small notebook. In order not to make any mistakes, Yang Tian looked through the pages one by one. This process was actually the strange program checking for Yang Tian. The result was that there was no problem. Yang Tian was very rigorous in learning things. Of course, he wouldn't make a mistake. After closing the notebook and folding the blueprint, Yang Tian took these two things and walked in the direction Zhang Taishian left. The clan's land was very large. At this time, hundreds of thousands of people were participating in the repair work. It was not easy to find a small group of people. Karcha helped Yang Tian ask along the way and finally found Zhang Taishuan's group. Jiang Taixian had just given an order to one of his subordinates when he saw Yang Tian walking towards him. Seeing Yang Tian's arrival, Jiang Taixian laughed. In his eyes there was a trace of disdain. In his opinion, Yang Tian must have come to return the blueprint because he couldn't understand it. If that was the case, he could send Yang Tian away with a few words. There would be one less trouble. Generally, those who did technical work hated people with connections. How is it? Is it done? Jiang Taixian asked with a smile as he looked at Yang Tian, who was getting closer and closer. Yang Tian handed the folded blueprint to Jiang Taixian and said with a smile, "It's done. This is the list." Jiang Taixian had just taken the blueprint when he saw Yang Tian hand over a small notebook. There was a look of surprise in his eyes. With a puzzled expression, Jiang Taixian flipped through the things Yang Tian had written page by page. In fact, Jiang Taixian wouldn't do this kind of statistical work. It was all done by his subordinate. He only looked at the data that he had just seen. It was the list of the most important materials reported by his subordinate. As he read, Jiang Taixian frowned. He found that the quantity of several materials was at least 15% different from the quantity reported by his subordinate. Jiang Taixian didn't doubt the abilities of his subordinate. After seeing the data, he laughed and said, "You must have calculated it wrong. For example, there should be 1,251 carts of this kind of universe blue stone used to draw energy lines. You actually calculated more than 200 carts. Because the quantity required was extremely large, the collection of materials was calculated in units such as carts." When the strange program calculated, it took all the factors into consideration, including the places where the previous rune arrays had to be changed. The group of people in the rune division hadn't realized this problem yet. They would only discover it when the repair work was completed. But by then, it would be too late. Much of the early work would be in vain, and they would have to start all over again. Yang Tian pondered for a moment, thinking about how to bring up the matter tactfully. Then he heard an old man behind Jiang Taixian sneer and say, "More than 200 carts? Who did you learn arithmetic from? Do you know how much manpower and material resources would be wasted with more than 200 carts?" Yang Tian smiled and said, "I know that more than 200 carts have been calculated, and that's not the only type. In addition to the universe blue stone, there are also blue crystals, darkening stone and so on." Jiang Taixian heard something strange from Yang Tian's words and couldn't help but ask curiously, "Since you already know, why did you still report more?" Those who were skilled in technology were extremely sensitive to such things. Yang Tian said, "Because I saw the design drawings and the modification plan depicted on the drawings. In such a short time, the rune division calculated the losses and knew what needed to be repaired. It's really amazing. You must know that the amount of work on the clan's land is really huge." After Yang Tian finished speaking, not only Jiang Taixian, but also Jiang Taishuan's subordinates looked proud. Everyone wanted to hear nice words. After saying nice words, Yang Tian continued, "You are all busy with your daily affairs. You may not have considered that some of the rune arrays that were not damaged by the exotic beasts need to be replaced. For example, the universe blue stone has been deformed in the cold wind and high temperature over the past few years." Before Yang Tian finished speaking, Jiang Taixian had already frowned. It wasn't that he hadn't thought of this problem before. However, the task assigned to him by the higher-ups had a time limit. If what Yang Tian said was true, then some of the projects would definitely have to be redone. That would make the matter even more serious. While Jiang Taixian was still thinking, he heard Yang Tian say, "There's another big problem. This rune array system is not perfect. It can't make full use of energy." "Shut up." Before Yang Tian could finish speaking, the old man who had mocked Yang Tian just now shouted coldly. What Yang Tian had said was equivalent to saying that the rune array system they had designed was not good enough. Yang Tian stopped talking. He just shrugged and looked at Zhang Taixian, waiting for the old man's reaction. Chapter 645. Zhang Taixian was silent for a moment, then looked at Yang Tian with a frown and said, Yang Tian, you have to take responsibility for what you said. If you can't come up with a better plan than this rune system, you will become the enemy of the entire runes department, and the consequences will be very serious. If you take back what you just said and apologize to everyone, there is still a possibility of saving the situation. We old guys won't bicker with a young man like you. After Zhang Taixian finished speaking, the group of people surrounded Yang Tian and Karst. The little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder looked coldly at the people around him, ready to fight. But Yang Tian laughed. He glanced at the subordinates of Zhang Taixian who surrounded him and said, You can't let others say that the thing you designed is not good? Good. Zhang Taixian said with a gloomy face and said to Yang Tian, Then come with us to the runes department. If you can't come up with a better design, okay. Before Zhang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian simply agreed. Zhang Taixian nodded, turned and walked quickly toward the center of the clanland. Yang Tian immediately followed. While walking, Zhang Taixian's men kept Yang Tian in the middle, as if they were afraid that he would run away. In fact, Yang Tian didn't want to make things so tense, but he found that this group of technical people always had blind confidence in their own work. In fact, Yang Tian was the same. He was also very confident in the ability of the strange program. He believed that human rune masters couldn't compare with the strange program in terms of computing ability. This didn't mean that the human brain couldn't compare with the strange program. In fact, in most cases, the strange program couldn't compare with the human brain. For example, imagination, logical thinking, and so on. In these aspects, the strange program had said that it was far inferior to humans. Zhang Taixian walked very quickly. More than 10 minutes later, he brought Yang Tian to the gate of the rune department, which occupied a very large area in the center of the clan land. The runes department did not look conspicuous. There was a tablet at the entrance that was engraved with runes. Unlike other places, there would be guards at the gate. The door of the runes department was wide open, as if it was unguarded. In fact, the runes department was shrouded in layers of rune array energy. If one did not have a key, they would not be able to enter and leave at will. Zhang Taixian directly walked through the door. In the process, waves of rune energy fluctuations were generated. The strange program simulated this scenario for Yang Tian. In Yang Tian's mind, when Zhang Taixian walked through the gate of the runes department, it was as if he had broken into still water, producing circles of energy ripples. Zhang Taixian entered the gate of the runes department, but Yang Tian stopped in front of the tablet. Because the group walked too fast, Karst was somewhat out of breath. Zhang Taixian's group of subordinates still surrounded Yang Tian, looking at Yang Tian with a gloomy face. It seemed that if Yang Tian could not come up with a better rune array system design, they would probably cut Yang Tian into pieces to vent their anger. After Zhang Taixian entered the gate of the runes department, he did not come out for a long time. The beast tide had just passed, and the runes department was a relatively busy place. From time to time, there were people going in and out. Whether they were going in or out, they would all curiously look at Yang Tian and his group. Yang Tian was very patient, waiting quietly with his arms crossed. About 10 minutes later, Zhang Taixian came out of the gate and threw 2 black tokens to Yang Tian and Karst. This was the pass. With this thing, one could enter and leave the runes department at will. After Karst took the token, he was very happy. He thought he would be rejected at the door. Most likely, Zhang Taixian saw Karst as Yang Tian's follower. Cultivators needed to concentrate on their cultivation and did not pay much attention to the trivial matters of life. Therefore, it was normal for them to keep some people around to help them deal with these matters. After you go in, watch first and don't talk too much. Jiang Taixian reminded Yang Tian, then turned and walked through the gate. Yang Tian looked at the black token in his hand, smiled slightly, and stepped through the gate of the runes department. After crossing the high threshold, the first thing that entered Yang Tian's eyes was a large bluestone screen wall. This screen wall was very unique to the runes department. There were no exotic beasts carved on it, nor were there any beautiful patterns. Instead, it was carved with runes, just like the tablets outside. After bypassing the screen wall, there was another gate. As they walked forward, one of Jiang Taishuan's subordinates gave Yang Tian a look, indicating that Yang Tian should follow him. Yang Tian nodded. Further ahead, there was a very large courtyard. There were flowers and plants planted inside, and there was also a small pond. The courtyard was very quiet. There were people going in and out of the rooms all around. Everyone seemed to be moving lightly, for fear of making heavy footsteps. Yang Tian was led along one side of the corridor, and then into an inconspicuous room on the left. So far, Yang Tian's impression of the runes department was that it was like the courtyard of a rich family, and looked extremely ordinary. The room was very large, full of bookshelves, and there was a square model of the clan land in the middle. After Yang Tian entered the room, he saw Jiang Taixian standing next to the model, frowning tightly, as if he had encountered something difficult. "Manager, what's wrong?" Before Yang Tian could ask, one of Jiang Taishuan's subordinates asked. Looking at the expression on Jiang Taishuan's face, he knew that it was not because of Yang Tian. Jiang Taixian said, "The higher-ups suddenly changed their mind and suppressed the material procurement plan we submitted." "Why?" As soon as Jiang Taixian finished speaking, someone asked. "It's very simple," Jiang Taixian said, "because they want to rebuild a new clan land, right under here." "Good idea." As soon as Jiang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian said, "Moving underground, not only is it hidden, but it's also safe." As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Jiang Taixian snorted coldly and said, "It's easy to say, but extremely difficult to do. Because although the surface of this place is dry, the soil and stones are extremely wet 100 meters underground. It's extremely difficult to build, and it's costly. This kind of plan was mentioned a few hundred years ago." Next, Jiang Taixian complained. It was nothing more than saying that the higher-ups were amateurs who only knew how to let their imaginations run wild. In the face of Jiang Taishuan's complaints, the group just kept silent. "Actually, these can be achieved." After Jiang Taixian finished speaking, Yang Tian said with a smile, "Not only underground, but also in the sky." Jiang Taixian heard Yang Tian's words and said disdainfully, "It's easy to say, but it's a complicated and huge job to design. Even if everyone in the Rune Division doesn't eat, drink, or sleep, it will take several years to come up with a preliminary design plan. Unless it's a new design by the seniors in the Cloud Domain Divine Hall, then in a short time." At this point, Jiang Taixian suddenly stopped talking. He felt that it was a waste of saliva to tell Yang Tian all this. "Give me 10 days and I'll give you the design plan," Yang Tian said suddenly. "However, I want corresponding benefits." "What benefits?" As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, a woman's voice was heard from the door behind him. This voice was extremely familiar to Yang Tian. Yang Tian turned his head to look, and sure enough, the person in front of him was the woman in black that he had met at the mine. At that time, the woman had been wearing a tight-fitting black cheongsam. Now, she was wearing a white dress, which made her look more innocent. "Greetings, Auntie." While Yang Tian was in a daze, Jiang Taixian and his subordinates hurriedly bowed to the beautiful woman. Chapter 646. Facing everyone's greetings, the beautiful woman only nodded her head slightly and walked into the house. She came to the model of the clan land and looked at it. She then turned her head and stared at Yang Tian. "You said earlier that you can design a large city that is built underground or even floating in the sky." "Yes." Yang Tian nodded. What do you want in return? The beautiful woman asked again. This was the second time the woman had asked Yang Tian this question. Seeing how respectful Zhang Taixin and the others were to this beautiful woman, it was obvious that she was an upper echelon of the Hui family. As soon as the woman's voice fell, Zhang Taixin said, "Auntie, don't listen to his nonsense. Hundreds of years ago, the construction of an underground city had been demonstrated several times. The degree of complexity is unimaginable. It can only be completed if the talisman masters of the Cloud Domain Divine Temple personally designed it. Building it in the sky is even more impossible." After Zhang Taixin said this, the beautiful woman looked at Yang Tian and said, "You haven't answered me." Yang Tian had already thought of the benefit. He smiled and said, "I want the Hui family's cultivation technique, which is the full set of cultivation techniques from the basic to the immortal realm." Yang Tian made this request because he knew that his cultivation method was different from most people. If he received the full set of cultivation techniques, he would most likely not cultivate it but use it as a reference. When Yang Tian said this, the beautiful woman shook her head. "I can't promise you this. This is because I can only provide you with the cultivation techniques from the basic to the destiny realm. This is because my Hui family is a third-grade family in the entire continent. Our family's cultivation techniques can at most allow one to cultivate to the destiny enlightenment realm." "What's a third-class family?" Yang Tian asked curiously. You don't even know this." The moment Yang Tian finished speaking, a young girl appeared outside the door and said with a smile. Yang Tian looked at this young girl and felt that she looked familiar. He thought carefully and recalled that this woman, who was called Auntie, had been accompanied by a young man. So she was a woman dressed as a man. This girl was delicate and cute with big eyes. After returning to her female disguise, she looked like a beautiful girl who had walked out of a cartoon world. Seeing this young girl, Zhang Taixin and the others bowed again and called out, "Greetings, Lil Miss." Auntie and Lil Miss were most likely sisters, but their figures were completely different. They were most likely not born from the same mother. Just as Yang Tian was letting his imagination run wild, the girl quickly walked in front of Yang Tian and reached out her hand towards the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon didn't move. It was very smart and knew that this cute girl was just curious about it and didn't have any hostility. Even so, it wouldn't let the girl touch it, so it jumped onto Yang Tian's head. Yang Tian was already 1.9 meters tall, and this delicate girl was less than 1.7 meters tall. Naturally, she couldn't reach the little blue dragon unless she jumped up. Humph! Seeing that the little blue dragon didn't want to get close to her, the girl snorted and stomped her foot. She said to Yang Tian, "A third-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the destiny realm. A second-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the 100 transformation realm. A first-class family has a cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the soul travel realm. In the entire Yen domain, there are no first or second-class families." After the girl finished speaking, she returned to the side of the auntie. "All right. A cultivation technique that allows one to cultivate to the destiny realm is also fine," Yang Tian said with a helpless tone. "All right." After Yang Tian finished speaking, the auntie nodded. However, she immediately added, "If you can't complete it, I guarantee that you will die. You said the time limit yourself, 10 days. This sentence exposed the woman's cold and aloof nature. "Auntie, I'll help you look after him. How about it?" The moment the auntie finished speaking, the girl said with a smile. After the girl finished speaking, she looked at the auntie expectantly. The auntie nodded and then said to Zhang Taixin and the others, "In order to make it easier for him to work, Mr. Taixin, please assist him." "Yes." Although Zhang Taixin was extremely unwilling, he still responded. After taking another look at Yang Tian, The auntie left Jiang Taishuan's office with the girl. You begin. You only have 10 days. After the beautiful auntie left, Jiang Taishan said to Yang Tian. The restoration plan that the Rune Division had formulated when the beast tide had started had been shelved just like that. A lot of effort had been wasted, and this made Jiang Taishan very uncomfortable. In the Rune Division, there were many other managers besides Jiang Taishan. These people's feelings were probably the same as Jiang Taishuan's. Yang Tian understood that the woman called Auntie had agreed to let him design because regardless of whether Yang Tian succeeded or failed, the Hui Yi clan would not lose anything. However, if Yang Tian failed, he would have to pay for it with his life. She had asked Jiang Taishan and the others to assist Yang Tian, but in fact it was a kind of surveillance to prevent Yang Tian from running away if he failed. Yang Tian did not know if this woman still remembered that he was the person at the mine. Everyone, please help me move all the rune books over. I want to read them one by one. After Jiang Taishan finished speaking, Yang Tian stopped thinking and smiled at everyone. Don't tell me you can't even recognize all the runes? Jiang Taishan asked as he shot a look at his subordinate. Yang Tian smiled. Could it be that you have memorized all the runes? Jiang Taishan did not know how to answer. Memorize all the runes? Perhaps even the talisman masters of the Cloud Region Shrine could not do that. The reason the plan to build the clan's land underground was complicated was that there were many types of runes used. Almost all the talisman masters only had some attainments in a single field. Looking at Yang Tian's confident look, Jiang Taishan did not think that Yang Tian could succeed. Because that was simply impossible soon, Jiang Taishuan's subordinates moved the books that Yang Tian needed over and piled them on a large table. Yang Tian sat down at the table and picked up a book at random to read. Jiang Taishan waved to his subordinates and asked them to leave. Karcha knew that it was not appropriate for him to stay there. After Jiang Taishuan's subordinates left, he said goodbye to Yang Tian and also left, closing the door on his way out. Only Yang Tian, Jiang Taishan, and the little blue dragon were left in the room. Jiang Taishan took out a drink from his storage bracelet and sat opposite Yang Tian, sipping his drink while looking at Yang Tian. Since the ant had ordered, he could not let Yang Tian run away. Yang Tian flipped through a few pages and felt a headache coming on when he saw the densely packed runes on them. In order to divert his attention, Yang Tian looked up at Jiang Taishan and then lowered his head. While flipping through the book, he asked, Lord Taishan, may I ask, who is the person you just called Ant? Yang Tian flipped through the pages very quickly. In the blink of an eye, he turned to the next page, which did not look like he was reading a book at all. Yang Tian's behavior made Jiang Taishan feel that Yang Tian was deliberately stalling for time. Of course, he did not understand that the strange program was recording the runes of this world through Yang Tian's vision. Compared to Yang Tian's previous universe world, the runes of this world were more complete in terms of both types and number. Moreover, the cultivators of this world were more systematic in terms of the study of runes, both in terms of learning and utilization. Although he thought that Yang Tian was stalling for time, Jiang Taishan still answered, she is the younger sister of the Hui family leader. Her name is Hui Miao Miao. Hui Miao Miao, what a nice name. Yang Tian thought and then asked, what about the little girl? Just as Yang Tian asked this, the door was pushed open and the girl called Little Miss came in. She smiled and said, I am Hui Chanchan. Chapter 647. After Hui Chanchan said her name, she moved a chair and sat next to Yang Tian. She looked at Yang Tian curiously. With this girl sitting next to him, Yang Tian could not ask Jiang Taishan any more questions about the Hui family. Jiang Taishan also took out a rune book and pretended to be reading. Yang Tian began to focus on flipping through the book. He sped up. Yang Tian flipped through several books at an extremely fast speed. It did not look like he was reading but simply flipping through books. Hui Chanchan could not help but ask curiously, "Why are you reading so fast?" Yang Tian smiled and said, "I flip through books. Oh no, I read very quickly. I can read 10 lines at a glance." "Did you memorize it?" Hui Chanchan asked curiously. Yang Tian said proudly, "Of course. Do you think I'm pretending?" Hui Chanchan rolled her eyes and picked up the book that Yang Tian had just flipped through. She waved it at Yang Tian and asked, "Then tell me, what is written on the 3rd page of this book?" She was testing Yang Tian. Zhang Taixian put down the rune book in his hand and looked at this with interest. In fact, he also wanted to test Yang Tian just now. He wanted to know if Yang Tian had memorized the runes on the book. If Yang Tian could memorize the runes with just one glance, then his talent in runes would be incredible. Because none of the stewards of the rune division, including him, could do that. "The 3rd page, right?" Yang Tian said. He took out a pen from the pen holder on the table and a piece of paper and began to write. In less than 3 minutes, Yang Tian finished. He pushed the paper to Hui Chanchan and continued to flip through the rune book in his hand. Hui Chanchan flipped through the book in her hand and looked at the piece of paper that Yang Tian had written from memory. She compared it seriously. After a long time, when Yang Tian had finished flipping through the book, Hui Chanchan suddenly exclaimed. She opened her eyes wide and said, "You really got it all right? No, I have to test you again." Yang Tian only smiled. Thinking about it, Hui Chanchan took out the book at the bottom of the pile that Yang Tian had flipped through. After flipping through it, Hui Chanchan said to Yang Tian, "Write the runes on the 5th and 20th pages. If you get them right again, I'll admit that you remembered them all." Yang Tian put the book down and began to write again. In less than 10 minutes, Yang Tian was done. He handed the 2 pages of runes to Hui Chanchan before continuing to read. Like before, Hui Chanchan began to compare carefully. At this time, Zhang Taixian could not sit still. He came behind Hui Chanchan and carefully looked at the runes on the book and Yang Tian's runes. The more Zhang Taixian looked, the more shocked he was. Although he thought that the runes written by Yang Tian were ugly, they were completely accurate. Suddenly, Hui Chanchan exclaimed again, "Yang Tian, I didn't expect you to get them all right again. No, you have to write again." There was a second time, but not a third time. Yang Tian waved his hand and said, "I'm not writing anymore. It's fine if you don't believe me." Hearing Yang Tian's words, Hui Chanchan pouted. She was very unhappy. Yang Tian ignored her and focused on flipping through the book. The unread books on runes on the table decreased one by one. After calming himself down, Yang Tian suddenly realized that he could recognize some of the runes and knew the meaning of these runes. Although he did not deliberately study runes, Yang Tian still remembered some of the runes he had helped the strange program read. Yang Tian originally thought that Hui Chanchan would leave after getting bored. He did not expect the girl to be very patient. She sat beside him and took out a cultivation technique from her storage bracelet and started reading it. She appeared to be very serious. Zhang Taixian was different. He looked at Yang Tian with a complicated expression. Through Hui Chanchan's assessment of Yang Tian, Zhang Taixian had realized that Yang Tian was indeed a genius in the Tao of runes. Yang Tian's image in Zhang Taishuan's mind had changed too quickly. Zhang Taixian found it hard to accept. Yang Tian glanced at Zhang Taishuan's expression and knew how the old man felt. He did not say anything and continued flipping through the rune book. Yang Tian continued to flip through the books. Using half a day's time, he had finished reading dozens of rune books. "Lord Taixian, are there any more?" Yang Tian asked with a smile after putting down the last book. Zhang Taixian shook his head. "These are all the runes I've collected. If you want to see more runes, you'll have to go to the cloud domain and enter the Sacred Hall." "Sacred Hall?" Yang Tian asked. Yang Tian had heard these words many times. Before Zhang Taixin could answer, Hui Chanchan said, "There are 3 sacred halls in the cloud domain. They are the Starry Sky Sacred Hall, the Sky Domain Sacred Hall, and the Wuji Sacred Hall. In the cloud domain, these 3 sacred halls are the 3 sects that rule the entire cloud domain continent." "Aren't there any countries in the cloud domain?" Yang Tian asked. Hui Chanchan shook her head. "No. Other than the sacred halls, there are only families. Actually, a family is an empire. In a world where cultivators existed, the conditions for a country to exist were actually weakened. For example, in the universe where Yang Tian had come from, an interstellar empire had to listen to the orders of the superstar Sacred Hall. If a country could not be independent and had to listen to the orders of other organizations and act according to other people's wishes, it could no longer be considered a country. If there's a chance, I would like to go to the cloud domain and see for myself." After muttering to himself, Yang Tian looked at Hui Chanchan, whose eyes were wide open, and asked, "Have you been to the cloud domain before?" Hui Chanchan nodded. "When I was very young, my aunt took me there. It's a very beautiful place. I don't want to come back after going there." Hui Chanchan's eyes were filled with yearning as she spoke. "It's not that easy to go to the cloud domain," Zhang Taixin said suddenly. Zhang Taixin suddenly said, "Because the population of the cloud domain is very dense, people from other regions are forbidden to stay in the cloud domain for long. Also, the cloud domain is not as beautiful as people think." "Duke Taixin, have you been to the cloud domain before?" Yang Tian asked curiously after Zhang Taixin finished speaking. Zhang Taixin only curled his lips and did not answer Yang Tian. While they were talking, the strange program had already sorted out the design and displayed a 3-dimensional diagram in Yang Tian's mind. The designed underground city was like an inverted golden pagoda. It was 1,000 meters tall from the ground to the deepest part of the underground. The part close to the surface was half the size of the clan's land. In this way, the inverted golden pagoda-shaped underground city could actually accommodate more people. After looking at the design, Yang Tian picked up a pen and drew a simple diagram on a piece of paper. He marked out some data and said to Zhang Taixin, "Duke Taixin, what do you think of this underground city? So fast." Zhang Taixin looked surprised as he took Yang Tian's drawing in his hand. As soon as he saw the design, Zhang Taixin frowned. Because the design was too simple, even an underage child in the clan could draw such a design. Seeing the expression on Zhang Taixuan's face, Yang Tian said with a smile, "This is just the outer appearance of the underground city. If I want a specific design, I'll have to draw it for a few days. If I want a specific design, I'll have to draw it for a few days. Let me see." As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, Hui Chanchan snatched the diagram from Zhang Taixuan's hand. After looking at it, she could not help but giggle. Zhang Taixin frowned and said, "Then let's wait until you have all the design drawings. I have to remind you of a few points. First, although the buildings built underground are safer, there are many shortcomings. For example, there is insufficient light and ventilation. Also, living underground for a long time is not good for people's psychology and will create a sense of depression. Second, because of the humid environment, you have to consider the problem of building materials. Third, you have to calculate the cost and the time it takes to make the proposal. If the cost is too high, it will be a failure." Zhang Taixin raised a lot of questions in one breath. Yang Tian listened very carefully and even took notes. Although the strange program calculated the design drawings and took into account many possible problems. Chapter 648. After taking note of some of Zhang Taixuan's questions, Yang Tian deliberated and asked some common knowledge questions of this world. This made Hui and Chanchan look at Yang Tian as if they were looking at an alien. Because Yang Tian had accepted the mission, the Runes Division still arranged a place for Yang Tian even though they thought it was impossible. It was a simple and crude room, but it had been tidied up by Karcha. Karst was determined to follow Yang Tian because he felt that Yang Tian's future was limitless. When Yang Tian rises in the future, he would be able to enjoy all the benefits he could get from Yang Tian's fingers. He rested for a night. The next day, Yang Tian did not go to Xiang Taishuan's room. Instead, under Karcha's guidance, he went to the bank and exchanged 10 life crystals for lice crystals. When Yang Tian was in the mine, the louse crystal he collected was the size of a grain of rice and was in the form of light purple granules. The louse crystal that the bank exchanged for had been processed using a special method and had 2 different shapes. One was long, about 5 centimeters long and as thick as a finger. The other was round, twice the size of a grain of rice. One returnance life crystal could be exchanged for 50 long lice crystals or 250 round lice crystals. In other words, 50 round lice crystals were equivalent to 1 long lice crystal. The long lice crystals were usually used for large transactions, while the round lice crystals could be used to buy items of lower value. Yang Tian exchanged for 500 round lice crystals and 400 long lice crystals. Other than exchanging for lice crystals, there was also a special paper currency that could be used in the entire flame domain. Most ordinary humans in the clan used paper currency. Cultivators were rich and had storage tools, so it was more convenient for them to use lice crystals. But for ordinary humans, without storage tools, lice crystals would fall off easily and were inconvenient to carry around. The wages of Karst and the others were also paid in paper money. Of course, they could also exchange paper for lice crystals of equal value. Karst had a storage ring with a small storage space. Every time he received his salary, he would immediately exchange it for lice crystals. He had stayed in the Hui family for more than 10 years, but the number of lice crystals he had accumulated wasn't even 1/10 of what Yang Tian had. There were a total of 18 life crystals. Yang Tian exchanged 10 of them, while the remaining 8 were reserved for the little blue dragon. Although the little blue dragon had consumed 8 returnance life crystals and the energy it had obtained was not enough for it to break through, it was still better than nothing. For example, if he was tired after a battle, he could use it to replenish the energy of the little blue dragon. Hearing Yang Tian telling the little blue dragon that he would leave 8 life crystals for it as snacks, Karcha was envious. The little blue dragon responded to Karcha's proud gaze. Every time he looked at Karst, the little blue dragon would think of that fatty from Juliang City. Actually, before the beast tide, the clan's land was very prosperous. There were shops everywhere, and the people on the streets were all huddled together. As they walked, Kacha described the scene of the beast horde to Yang Tian after seeing the ruins around them. The clan's land is so big, and there are so many people. What do they eat? Yang Tian asked curiously after Karst finished. Karst said, farming. A small lice crystal can be dissolved in water using a special method. In a month's time, a strong grain can produce enough grain for a family of 3. As for other food, some of them are grown like strong grains, some of them are harvested by cultivators from faraway forests, and some of them are obtained from hunting exotic beasts. Yang Tian finally remembered that when he ate, there would be a large piece of food that was slightly smaller than a football. Tasted like a sweet potato. So this was strong grain. Strong grain had a purple outer shell. After peeling it off, there were snow-white crystals inside, just like pearls. They were soft in the mouth, and had a sweet taste. An ordinary person would need to eat about 2 of them every day to maintain the energy needed for a day's work. Quickly take me to have a look. Yang Tian urged Karst out of curiosity. Karst nodded, and led Yang Tian to the center of the clan's land. After passing through the 4th wall, they saw a strong grain tree that was thicker than an adult's thigh. The leaves of this kind of tree were very thick, light green, and palm-sized. The trees were densely packed with strong grains. There were at least several hundred strong grains on each tree. The tree's skill bar was very hard. It was thinner than a finger, and more than 10 strong grains could be hung on it. It looked very strong. This was probably the origin of this tree's name. The strong grains produced by this tree could support an adult for at least half a year. Looking at the roots of the trees, they were surrounded by bluestones. There was black soil inside, and it was obvious that it had just been loosened. What are the conditions for this kind of tree to grow? Yang Tian asked curiously. Karst said, it doesn't have high requirements. It only needs sunlight for a moment every day. However, it is afraid of the cold. Can it be grown underground? Yang Tian asked again. Karst said, if it can receive sunlight, it will be okay. The sunlight here was the same as the sunlight on Earth. It was the light from the stars in the sky. After seeing this kind of tree, Yang Tian felt that the people in this world were very fortunate. They didn't need to worry about food. No wonder people didn't get sick. This food was truly green. It absorbed the energy of the lice crystal to grow. When ordinary people ate this kind of food, it was the same as indirectly absorbing the energy of the lice crystal. Although the amount wasn't much, it could still keep people healthy. In the next few days, Yang Tian wandered around the clansland. Because the design of the underground city had to consider the production and living conditions of the people. Just like the strong grains, the construction of the underground city had to use runes to project the light of the stars into the city. Only then could the strong grains grow. 7 days of the 10 days agreed with Huey Meow Meow quickly passed. On the 8th day, Yang Tian went out for a walk and then went to Zhang Taixian's workshop. When Yang Tian went out these days, although only Karst followed him, there was someone watching Yang Tian all the time. At this time, the strange program had finished the design. Yang Tian entered Zhang Taixian's room. There was no one inside. After searching for a long time, Yang Tian finally found a few large, blank pieces of paper. The clan's land model in the middle of the room had been removed. Yang Tian could use it to draw. Of course, the drawing process was a strange program that controlled Yang Tian's body to draw on the blueprint. Yang Tian and Karst had just laid out the paper when the door was pushed open. The first to enter was Zhang Taixian, followed by an unfamiliar old man in a red robe. Then came Huey Chanchan, followed by a large group of people from the Rune Division. Zhang Taixian didn't say anything. The unfamiliar old man came in front of Yang Tian and said to Yang Tian, "Don't hurry to draw the design. Defeat me first. I want to fight with you. If you lose, leave the Rune Division immediately. If you win, I will listen to you." Good. Good. Huey and Chanchan clapped their hands and cheered. Yang Tian scratched his head and stared at the unfamiliar old man with wide eyes. What was going on? Chapter 649. So, do you dare? The red-robed elder looked at Yang Tian and sneered. Yang Tian was not one to admit defeat. In the face of such provocation, he naturally replied, "Why wouldn't I dare? Good. Follow me to the law hall." With that, the red-robed elder turned and left. Who is he? Yang Tian grabbed Huey Chanchan and asked with a frown. Huey Chanchan was not unhappy when Yang Tian grabbed her. She smiled at Yang Tian and said, "He is the head of the Runes Division, Tai Xing. He is a level 4 talisman master, Yang Tian. I hope you can defeat him." With that, Huey Chanchan waved her fist at Yang Tian to cheer him on. "I'll try my best." Yang Tian smiled. Following behind the group of people, Yang Tian entered the largest house in the Runes Division. He then walked down the stone steps and arrived at a spacious stone room dozens of meters underground. This stone room was square in shape. It was about 50 meters wide and 10 meters tall. This was the law hall that the Runes Division had mentioned. The law hall was also where the Runes Division researched runes. This was because in the process of researching runes, there was a possibility of generating a powerful force. Hence, the law hall was a special place. The ceiling, floor, and walls of the law hall were all carved with runes. These runes could generate a powerful defensive force and absorb all kinds of destructive forces. In the middle of the law hall was a round platform that was 10 meters wide and a few meters tall. After Tai Xing entered this place, he directly jumped onto this round platform and sat down cross-legged. After Yang Tian walked into the law hall, he looked around. To Yang Tian's surprise, the law hall was already filled with people. There were many seats around the round platform. In front of the seats was a table that was 2 meters long. On the table were food, drinks, and other items. There were a total of 36 seats, divided into 3 circles. The arrangement was extremely ingenious. If one were to look down from above, the seats and the circular platform in the middle would look like the 8 trigrams. The front row was already filled with people. Yang Tian knew Hui Miao Miao, but the others were all old men. Yang Tian didn't know any of them. After Yang Tian entered, Zhang Taixian, one of the heads of the runes department, sat in the outermost seat. The others also took their seat. Hui Chanchan sat beside her sister Hui Miao Miao. Those who could sit here were all people with a certain status in the Hui family. The others could only stand and watch. At least 200 people had gathered in the hall. Ever since Yang Tian had entered the law hall, Tai Xing had been watching Yang Tian closely. Hence, most people's attention was on Yang Tian. Everyone was clear about what had happened this time. The head of the runes department, Tai Xing, wanted to fight Yang Tian. This was the first time something like this had happened in the Hui family. Furthermore, it was a well-known rune master challenging a young man. Yang Tian was really too young. No matter how one looked at him, he didn't look like a rune Dao expert. After scanning the law hall, Yang Tian walked down the platform under the watchful eyes of the crowd. A battle of techniques required a quiet environment. Although many people were watching the show, the entire law hall was very quiet. No one spoke, and even the sound of breathing was relatively soft. Yang Tian wasn't sure how to fight a battle of technique. However, he knew that he had to go up on the platform. Hence, Yang Tian leaped onto the platform. This guy really doesn't know the rules. Seeing Yang Tian jump onto the platform, someone couldn't help but comment. This sentence was very loud in the silent law hall. Yang Tian, who had jumped onto the platform, was puzzled when he heard it. Seeing Yang Tian jump onto the platform, Tai Xing's face darkened. He said plainly, "Do you want to have a battle of life and death with me?" Yang Tian understood that he shouldn't be on the platform now. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, "Sorry? I don't know the rules." Tai Xing said, "You're a rune master and you don't know the rules?" Yang Tian nodded very sincerely. Tai Xing saw that Yang Tian's expression didn't seem like he was lying. However, this made him even more unhappy. This was because those who didn't know the rules were usually amateurs. He was a level 4 rune master. If he challenged an amateur, even if he won easily, it would be a very embarrassing thing if word got out in the future. Humph! After snorting coldly, Tai Xing raised his hand and pointed below the platform. He said, "You'll set questions below the platform and I'll answer them. The questions must be related to runes. I'll answer as many questions as you set. When I get 3 questions wrong, I'll get off the platform. Next, it's your turn to go on the platform and I'll set the questions. In this process, there are 3 requirements for the questions. First, you must be able to complete the questions on the platform in a short time. Second, you must be able to complete the questions set by the question setter in a short time. Third, in the process of answering the questions, you must not take out rune books or items that record rune information to look at." When Tai Xing said this, Yang Tian roughly understood what this battle was. This was equivalent to a kind of literary battle. Yang Tian originally thought that the two of them would use the power of runes to fight on the platform. He thought that this was the whole process of the battle. He didn't expect that after Tai Xing finished with the 3 requirements, he said, After the two of us set the questions, both of you will go on the platform and the rune masters below the platform will set the questions. Whoever solves the most questions will win. There was actually such a process. Yang Tian scanned the audience below the platform and felt that he was at a disadvantage in this competition. Seeing Yang Tian's expression, Tai Xing said, "Don't worry, I won't take advantage of you. The questions will be set by the clan elders." Clan elders. Yang Tian took another careful look below the platform and realized that the 3 clan elders he had seen before were actually seated. Furthermore, the 3 clan elders were sitting in a circle in the middle. The clan elders were the upper echelons of the Hui family. However, compared to people like Hui Miao Miao, their status in the clan was lower. The clan elders could be seen as the housekeepers of the Hui family. In that case, the people sitting in the middle should also be clan elders like the 3 clan elders. Then, who was the middle-aged man in black robes, sitting beside Hui Miao Miao? When Yang Tian looked at the middle-aged man, the ordinary-looking middle-aged man also looked at Yang Tian. The man smiled and nodded at Yang Tian. "Now let's begin," Tai Xing suddenly said. Yang Tian had no choice but to jump off the platform. Since they were all below the platform, Yang Tian stood beside Hui Chanchan. Now, it was Yang Tian's turn to set the question. Tai Xing, who was sitting cross-legged on the platform, closed his eyes. What kind of question would be difficult for this old man to solve? Yang Tian pinched his chin and frowned as he thought. To Yang Tian, solving the question was easy. However, setting the question was a little troublesome. Just as he was in a dilemma, Yang Tian heard a chuckle beside him. It turned out that Hui Chanchan had seen Yang Tian's frown and couldn't help but laugh. However, after seeing Hui Chanchan, Yang Tian suddenly had a question in his mind. Chapter 650. Manager, how about we compete in memory runes? Yang Tian looked at Tai Xing on the stage and said with a smile after thinking of the assessment topic. Please. Tai Xing opened his eyes and said lightly. Yang Tian nodded and said to Xiang Taixian, I'll have to ask Duke Taixian for help with this matter. Xiang Taixian was the person Yang Tian was most familiar with in the Rune Division, so he had to ask Xiang Taixian for help. Xiang Taixian understood Yang Tian's meaning. He stood up and said to the other managers, Everyone, help me write 2 pages of runes each. More than a dozen managers nodded, took out paper and pens from their storage tools, and began to write. Including Xiang Taixian, there were a total of 18 managers. Each of them wrote 2 pages, which added up to 36 pages. They were all rune masters, so they carried paper and pens to record runes. A few minutes later, Xiang Taixian put away the 36 pages, numbered them, walked to Yang Tian, and handed them to Yang Tian. Yang Tian did not look at them, and said to Tai Xing, If you can memorize all of them in 100 breaths of time, it's my loss. With that, Yang Tian handed a stack of papers full of runes to Tai Xing on the stage. It was not difficult, so no one found it strange. When Tai Xing reached out to take it, everyone looked at Tai Xing 100 breaths of time, which was the time it took an ordinary person to breathe 100 times, was about 3 minutes. In fact, after Yang Tian came up with this topic, Tai Xing felt it was a little difficult. If it was the rune books he usually read, he could recite them backwards, but these were all written randomly, so it was too difficult to remember. Although he felt it was difficult, Tai Xing still flipped through it. 100 breaths of time passed quickly. Cultivators were sensitive to time. After 100 breaths of time, Tai Xing had also finished reading the 36 pages of runes. Tai Xing looked up at Yang Tian, who was smiling with his hands folded, and took out a pen and paper to write. Everyone in the Justice Hall held their breaths at the same time. The people from the Rune Division were especially nervous. This was because Tai Xing was the chief manager of the Runes Division and had the highest attainments in runes. If he lost to Yang Tian, It meant that no one in the entire runes division could compare to Yang Tian. When Tai Xing was writing, he frowned. After writing more than 10 pages, he stopped and shook his head. This also meant that he had failed. Since you came up with the question, it's your turn now. After Tai Xing put down his pen, someone said loudly to Yang Tian. Yang Tian smiled and nodded. Tai Xing handed the 36 pages of runes back to Yang Tian, and Yang Tian held it in his hand. At this moment, Hui Chanchan looked at Yang Tian with wide eyes and a smile on her face. She knew that Yang Tian would definitely win this question. She had tested Yang Tian a few days ago. Besides Hui Chanchan, even Xiang Taixin knew that Yang Tian had won. Yang Tian flipped through the pages quickly and finished reading in less than 100 breaths of time. Then, he handed the 36 pages back to Xiang Taixin and asked him for a pen and paper to write. No one could compare to the strange program when it came to memorizing runes. This was because the strange program recorded runes in a different way from humans. It was like a camera that quickly took pictures. When Yang Tian was writing the runes, the strange program would show the contents of each page of runes in Yang Tian's mind. Yang Tian just had to copy it. In about 5 minutes, Yang Tian was done. Xiang Taixin divided the 36 pages that Yang Tian had written into 18 copies and distributed them. After a round of inspection, the 18 managers were convinced. Yang Tian's copying was simply too accurate. They had deliberately written the wrong runes, and Yang Tian had copied them accordingly. This ability to memorize runes was simply terrifying. I've lost this question, Tai Xing admitted directly after the results were out. He was very straightforward. Next was the second question. Yang Tian had thought of this question on the spot. He said, use no more than 50 runes to design a small defensive array formation. No matter how strong the defense is, it's fine as long as it's effective. 50 runes can be used repeatedly. This question was like writing an essay. For example, give 50 Chinese characters and write a short story. Every question had to be completed in a short time. Tai Xing thought for more than 10 minutes and sighed. I admit defeat for this question. This kind of question was very easy for Yang Tian, no, for the strange program. This was because the strange program had a huge amount of rune information. Before coming up with this question, Yang Tian had asked the strange program in his mind. The strange program told Yang Tian that he didn't need 50 runes. He only needed 46 runes. Therefore, Yang Tian said this question. After Tai Xing admitted defeat, Yang Tian didn't need anyone to remind him. He took out a rune pen and started to draw on Hui Chanchan's stone table. When Yang Tian finished drawing the last rune energy line, there was a faint energy fluctuation. Everyone could feel it without getting close. A few managers went forward and looked at the rune array that Yang Tian had drawn. They nodded at Tai Xing on the stage. At this time, they could see that Tai Xing's expression was a little gloomy. Unbelievable. These are all common runes. I didn't expect them to have such a great effect when combined. One of the managers couldn't help but exclaim after seeing the rune array that Yang Tian had drawn. At the same time, there was a look of enlightenment in his eyes. Yang Tian smiled. Sometimes, simple things are actually the most useful. It just depends on whether we know how to use them. When Yang Tian said this, the little blue dragon on his shoulder was smiling. It knew that Yang Tian didn't have this kind of ability. It was all thanks to the strange program. These rune masters wanted to compete with Yang Tian in runes. That was simply showing off in front of an expert. Although the cultivators in this world were powerful, they weren't the smartest. This was because the strange program was designed by the rune master, and the rune master wasn't from this world. Next was the third question. Yang Tian also did not wish to strike Tai Xing too harshly. He knew the principle of stopping before going too far. Therefore, he came up with a question that looked complicated, but was very simple for someone knowledgeable in runes. The third question: please write 1,000 different life runes. As soon as Yang Tian's voice fell, Tai Xing nodded and quickly finished writing. Yang Tian was considered to have lost this question. Tai Xing would only get off the stage if he failed 3 questions. But after writing 1,000 life runes, Tai Xing jumped off the stage and said to Yang Tian, "This old man will also give 3 questions." Yang Tian also didn't want to drag it on for too long. He nodded in agreement. In fact, Tai Xing also knew that Yang Tian had left him some face. Otherwise, if he failed 3 questions in a row, he would be too embarrassed to be a manager in the future. Chapter 651. Yang Tian jumped onto the stage and imitated Tai Xing. He sat down cross-legged and waited for Tai Xing to come up with the question. Tai Xing had lost 2 rounds and won 1. He was at a disadvantage. When he came up with the question, he had to rack his brains. If he lost this round again, there was no need to compete later. When he first saw Yang Tian, Tai Xing looked down on Yang Tian because Yang Tian was too young. Runes were not like other things. It took a long time to learn to reach a certain level. Even talented people had to learn for a long time. No matter how he looked at it, Yang Tian did not look like a rune master. Cultivators did not judge age by appearance, but by feeling the other party's aura of life. The younger the person, the more immature the aura of life. However, after a few rounds, Tai Xing's confidence was already lacking. The psychological contrast made him feel very uncomfortable. After living for so many years, this was the first time he was defeated by a young boy. Tai Xing was not the only one who felt uncomfortable. The other rune masters present also could not believe this result. After pacing for a while under the stage, Tai Xing finally thought of the question and said to Yang Tian, "Use less than 100 space runes to form a teleportation array. Complete a teleportation without the need for lice crystals." When Tai Xing came up with this question, the people of the Rune Division opened their eyes wide at the same time. Because this question was used by the Rune Master Association to assess the level of a Rune Master. If one could complete this question, one would be qualified to become a Level 4 Rune Master. Regarding the level certification of a Rune Master, there was a Rune Master Association in the entire continent, including the 4 major regions. To join the Rune Master Association, one must go through the level certification process. And the level certification process was very strict. No one expected that Tai Xing would come up with such a question. If Yang Tian could complete it, wouldn't he have the ability of a level 4 Rune Master? Yang Tian was still so young. Yang Tian pinched his chin and thought. In fact, Yang Tian was pretending. This was the strange sequence calculating Tai Xing's question. Yang Tian had helped the strange sequence to read the runes at Xiang Tai Xian's place. At this time, it happened to be of great use. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to complete this question if the database of strange program runes was insufficient. This was due to the systematization and refinement of the magic symbols in this world. Almost every charm magician had enough information about magic symbols. Of course, whether or not he knew how to use it was another matter. About 3 minutes later, the strange program said to Yang Tian, "That's enough. Actually, we don't need 100 runes. 79 of them are enough." It had only been 3 minutes. If Yang Tian said that he had thought it through, it would definitely be shocking. Yang Tian wanted to show off his abilities, but at the same time, he couldn't be too stunning. Because he didn't want to continue developing in the Talisman Dao at all. Yang Tian wanted the cultivation process to be the kind of continuous fighting, the kind that was hot-blooded and exciting. This was not only what Yang Tian needed, but also what the little blue dragon needed. When faced with so many paths, everyone could only choose one path to advance. The path that Yang Tian had chosen was undoubtedly a thrilling one. If he could walk down this path smoothly, his speed of improvement would be very, very fast. Have you thought it through? In a few more breaths, you will have failed. Yang Tian pinched his chin, frowned, and pretended to be deep in thought. Tai Xing finally couldn't help but ask when time was almost up. Yang Tian nodded. I have thought it through. As soon as Yang Tian finished speaking, 2 people from the Rune Division carried a square bluestone onto the stage and placed it in front of Yang Tian. Then, someone turned on the projection and displayed the bluestone. Yang Tian didn't expect this stage to have such a wonderful use. Yang Tian took out the runes from his storage bracelet and started to engrave them under the control of the strange program. In less than 5 minutes, Yang Tian had finished engraving. At this moment, the bluestone was covered with precise runes, as if it had been engraved by a machine. This made many rune masters sigh in admiration. Previously, when Yang Tian had engraved the runes on Hui Chanchan's table, many people didn't see it. When he used the last energy line to connect the 2 runes, waves of energy were emitted in all directions. Without needing to check, the rune masters knew that the runes that Yang Tian had engraved were effective. Moreover, from the projection, they could see that the number of spatial runes that Yang Tian had used was definitely less than 100. Of course, there were some that could be used repeatedly. This is simply a form of art. I never thought that those few runes could be used like this. Yes. Too ingenious. How did he think of this? He actually completed this question. His rune skills are at least that of a level 4 rune master. Genius. He really is a genius. In the Justice Hall, after everyone saw the rune array that Yang Tian had engraved, they were silent for a moment. Suddenly, there was a burst of discussion. Because the Justice Hall was sealed, the voices were getting louder and louder. Cough, cough. Tai Xing had no choice but to speak, and only then did his voice become softer. There were still 2 questions left. If Yang Tian could answer one more question correctly, then he would be tied with Tai Xing. However, Tai Xing had no intention of continuing the competition. He looked at Yang Tian on the stage and said, I have lost. As the head of the Hui family's rune division, Tai Xing decisively admitted defeat. Those who understood runes could see that Yang Tian was indeed capable. He wasn't a braggart as they had suspected. Boom. As soon as Tai Xing finished speaking, the discussion that had just died down in the Justice Hall was once again heard. To make such a decision, Tai Xing had also made a sudden decision. Since Tai Xing had admitted defeat, then the rest of the process could be skipped. Alright. At this time, Ka-Cha clenched his fist and shouted excitedly. Of course, he hoped that Yang Tian would win. At this time, Yang Tian noticed that the black-robed middle-aged man next to Hui Miao Miao had stood up. As soon as he stood up, Hui Miao Miao and the others all stood up as well. When he saw this, Yang Tian could not help but guess the identity of this black-robed middle-aged man. After the black-robed middle-aged man stood up, he nodded at Yang Tian with a smile, then turned around and left the Justice Hall. Yang Tian jumped down from the stage. Yang Tian, you are so good. I have high hopes for you. Hui Chanchan ran in front of Yang Tian and pulled on Yang Tian's arm, as she said with a smile. Yang Tian thought to himself, what's the point of a little girl like you having high hopes for me? If the Hui family had high hopes for me, then I would have a bright future. Who was that? Thinking of this, Yang Tian asked curiously. She is the family leader, Hui Baixing. The one who answered Yang Tian's question was Hui Miao Miao. Heads, elders, and Yang Tian, the family leader has invited all of you to the Justice Hall to discuss the future construction of the family grounds. Suddenly, someone shouted at the entrance of the Justice Hall. As soon as he said that, many people looked at Yang Tian enviously, because the family leader had personally invited Yang Tian. Chapter 652. It was a great honor to be invited by the clan leader. Others might feel that way, but Yang Tian didn't feel the same way. Yang Tian followed Huey Miao Miao to the teleportation area of the Rune Division. He used the teleportation array disk and arrived at the meeting hall. The meeting hall was a very secretive place for the Hui Yi clan. Many important meetings were held there. This was another underground space, but it was at least 3 times bigger than the meeting hall. It was arranged in the style of a hall. When Yang Tian, Huey Miao Miao, and Huey Chan Chan appeared, they were in the center of the hall. They couldn't see the door around them. The height from the ground to the top was about 20 meters. There were many exquisite, glowing rune array devices that looked like chandeliers hanging from the ceiling. They illuminated the hall very brightly. The floor was covered with blue tiles that looked like sapphires. They were so shiny that they could see their own shadows. In front of them was a high platform. Clan leader Huey Baixing was already sitting on it. He didn't look very dignified and was very casual. There were more than 10 people in 2 rows below him. They were probably the elders of the Hui Yi clan. Below them were the managers of the various divisions. There were 2 empty seats near the front. Huey Miao Miao walked over and sat on the empty seat. Huey Chan Chan was still young, so she stood behind her elder sister. Yang Tian glanced around and sat at the last seat. Yang Tian, come and sit here. Yang Tian had just sat down when Huey Baixing pointed at an empty seat in the front row and said with a smile. Yang Tian stood up and walked to the empty seat in front of Huey Miao Miao. After sitting down, Yang Tian scanned the hall. There were at least a few hundred people in the hall. 90% of them looked old. He Xian General and Xiang Taixian, whom Yang Tian was familiar with, were among them. After everyone was present, Hui Baixing smiled and said, "Today, I have gathered everyone here to discuss 2 matters. These concerns the future development of the Hui Yi family." After saying this, the Radiance Calamity Baixing paused for a moment before continuing. "The first thing is that the temple's recruitment of servants is coming soon. This time, the clans of the 3rd class and above had 100 spots. I hope that the elders will send their registered nephews to participate. Although the chances are slim, we still have to try." This concerned the future of the Hui Yi family. If someone could successfully enter the Divine Hall and become a deacon, they would be able to obtain a higher-level cultivation method from the Divine Hall. Wouldn't everyone benefit from it? The second matter was the construction of the clan land. "It's not that I want to make things difficult for you." According to reliable sources, a female deity crossed the Milky Way and appeared in the cloud region. She attracted a group of powerful strange beasts. It was foreseeable that in the near future, even stronger mutated beasts would appear in the 4 major regions, except for the Cloud Realm. At that time, the old clan land would not be able to defend against an even more powerful beast tide. Therefore, the only way is to build the clan land underground. When Hui Yi Baixing mentioned the female deity, Yang Tian's heart skipped a beat. He knew that the female deity that Hui Yi Baixing was talking about was very likely Qin Fei. Yang Tian lowered his head and fell into deep thought. While Yang Tian was thinking, a group of people were discussing which youngsters would be selected to participate in the Divine Hall's recruitment test. The Hui Yi family was a 3rd-class clan. There were many youngsters in the clan, and at least a few hundred of them were qualified to participate. However, there were only 100 spots, and a group of people would be eliminated. Who would be selected and who would be eliminated would have to be debated. Although no matter who was selected, they would all be Hui Yi family members, but it concerned the clan's personal interests. Basically, the elders were the ones debating, and the people in charge were all silent. This debate lasted for a long time. In the end, many of the people in charge started to doze off. This debate had nothing to do with them at all. "Yang Tian, what are you doing?" Shin Tian was daydreaming when he heard Hui Yi Chanchan's voice. Yang Tian finally woke up. He lifted his head and looked at Hui Yi Chanchan with a puzzled expression. "Are you sleeping?" Hui Yi Chanchan asked again. "No, I'm thinking about something," Yang Tian said. Hui Chan Chan giggled and reached out her hand, slowly approaching the little blue dragon. The little blue dragon coiled up on Yang Tian's shoulder with its eyes closed. It looked like it was asleep. When Hui Chan Chan's fingertips were 1 centimeter away from the little blue dragon suddenly opened its eyes and looked coldly at Hui Chan Chan. Hui Chan Chan was so frightened that she quickly retracted her hand and almost took a step back. This little guy is really alert, Hui Chan Chan exclaimed. She pouted and said to the little blue dragon, Can't you let me touch you? The little azure dragon ignored Hui and Chan Chan and closed its eyes in boredom. Humph! Hui Chan Chan saw that the little blue dragon was ignoring her and snorted unhappily. After shifting her attention away from the little blue dragon, Hui Chan Chan said to Yang Tian, Yang Tian, I will definitely be chosen. When the time comes, can you help me? Help you with what? Yang Tian asked curiously. Hui Chan Chan said, The test. You help me pass the test and let me become a deacon of the temple. As long as I succeed, I will repay you. There are so many powerful people in your family. You don't need my help, right? Yang Tian said. Hui Chan Chan said, But I think you're the most powerful. Since this beautiful girl thought so highly of him, Yang Tian nodded and said with a smile, All right. If I can help you, I will definitely help you. Seeing that Yang Tian agreed, Hui Chan Chan smiled happily. Deacon was a job in the temple. Since the temple was in the cloud region and Qin Fei had appeared in the cloud region, she would definitely have left some information. Yang Tian had to go to the cloud region. What is a deacon? Yang Tian asked again. Hui Chan Chan said, A deacon is a cultivator who enters the temple. They will be nurtured by the temple. After becoming a deacon, they will have to go through the temple's test every once in a while. If they don't pass, they will be expelled from the temple. Many people from our Hui family have entered the temple in the past tens of thousands of years. Even the family leader was once a deacon. Unfortunately, he didn't pass the test. When talking about the family leader, Hui Chan Chan's voice became much softer. Hui Miao Miao was sitting to the side. Naturally, she heard the conversation between Yang Tian and her sister clearly. When Hui Chan Chan mentioned that the family leader was expelled from the temple, Hui Miao Miao frowned. Because this was not a glorious thing for the Hui family. Seeing that her sister wanted to continue talking to Yang Tian, Hui Miao Miao coughed and said to Hui Chan Chan, Come here. Oh, Hui Chan Chan answered and went back to her sister helplessly. After half a day of debate, the list of 100 people was finally decided. An elder wrote it down and handed it to Hui Baixing. Hui Baixing took a look and nodded. He folded it and placed it on the table and said, Now, let's talk about the second matter. With that, he looked at Yang Tian and said, Yang Tian, you tell them. Chapter 653. Yang Tian did not expect Hui Baixing to let him speak first. After standing up from his seat, Yang Tian said, I have already thought about the design of the underground city. Within half a month, I will be able to draw up the blueprint, list the materials, and plan the construction. Don't worry, Patriarch. If anyone has any questions, feel free to raise them now. After speaking, Yang Tian sat down. In the past few days, Yang Tian had learned a lot of useful information. Based on this information, the strange program had made some changes to the blueprint, making the underground city even more perfect. Yang Tian thought that if the underground city was built according to the strange program's blueprint, the Hui family would not have to worry about losing people in the future beast hordes. Hiding underground was a very good idea. Actually, the mines would also be attacked by mutated beasts. However, those places were special. Thousands of meters underground, there were countless mines. When the beast hordes came, the guards would notice in advance. The miners would hide 1,000 meters underground and seal the entrance so that they would not be discovered by the mutated beasts. Even if they were discovered, the mutated beasts would not be able to enter the mines because of their huge bodies. The only downside was that they could not stay in the mines for too long. The mines could only hold tens of thousands of people. This method would not work in the clan. A family had millions of people. So many people needed to produce and live. They could not stay underground for too long. A family here was like a small country. The Hui family was the ruler. To make a family prosperous, it was not enough to just collect louse crystals. The clan needed culture and entertainment. They needed people to create all kinds of production tools. They needed to increase the population and maintain the number of cultivators in the family. Without the beast horde, Yang Tian could imagine that in less than 100 years, these clans would expand at an exponential rate within the Flame region. After that, they would devour each other. A huge empire might even appear. After Yang Tian sat down, Patriarch Hueha Baixing nodded. At this time, Hueha Baixing could already see that Yang Tian was a rare talent. If he could keep Yang Tian, the Hui family might be able to realize his hidden ambition. As a leader, the ability to judge people was the most basic ability. If one did not have the ability to judge people, one would not be able to become the patriarch of a family. I want to ask, if the clan is built underground, what will we do about the food we need? Do we have to buy it from other families? Or do we have to open another plantation? At this time, an elder stood up and asked Yang Tian. Yang Tian had already said that he could raise any questions. Now that someone asked him this, he stood up and said, "I have already considered this problem. When the time comes, the first and second level of the underground city will be built. When the time comes, it will be enough food for 50 million people." How? The elder asked again. The Baixing to Baixing, 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 and Baixing Baixing to Baixing. Baixing 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 Xing 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 Baixing Baixing by Beibeixing Xing 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 by Beibeixing Xing 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 by Beibeibeg Xing 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 Xing. When the beast tide comes, the rune mechanism will be activated, and the underground city will descend a few thousand meters underground. The top will be completely sealed. When the topic was brought up, Yang Tian became more talkative. The new underground city's planning will be different from the current one. There will be 100 levels, and each level will be equipped with many teleport portals. Other than the few levels that are not accessible, the residents will be able to reach their destination instantly. For example, the 3rd to 20th levels will be the residential areas for ordinary people. The levels will be designated as markets and commercial areas. After half an hour, Yang Tian finished explaining the situation of the underground city. When the elders were discussing the candidates for the temple deacon assessment, the managers of the various divisions were about to doze off. But when Yang Tian was explaining, everyone listened attentively. In their minds, the scene described by Yang Tian appeared. If it could be realized, the underground city would be perfect. It would be countless times better than the current clan land. I would like to know where the underground city will be built. According to what you said, it needs to be at least a few thousand meters deep. Here, if we dig a few hundred meters deep, there will be water. During the construction process, if we don't dig a few thousand meters deep, water will seep in. How will we continue to build? The one who asked this question was the Rune Division Manager, Tai Xing. After Tai Xing raised this question, he didn't sit down. Instead, he stared at Yang Tian and waited for Yang Tian's answer. Yang Tian smiled. "That's easy. Rune arrays can solve this problem. I guarantee that during the construction process, even if we dig 10,000 meters deep, there won't be a single drop of water. After the underground city is built, we can remove the waterproof rune array. The water surrounding the underground city will be a natural defense." After Yang Tian finished speaking, Tai Xing nodded and sat down. Another manager stood up and said to Yang Tian, "Since your attainments in Talisman Dao are so high, why do you still want to build an underground city? With so many materials, why don't you just set up a talisman array with powerful defensive power outside the clan's land? In this way, we only need to modify the current clan land. It will save time and effort." Before Yang Tian could answer, Huey Meow Meow stood up and said, "The clan land is so big. If we have to set up such a rune array, we won't be able to afford it." After Huey Meow Meow finished speaking, Yang Tian nodded and said, "That's true. Those who know about rune arrays know that the energy defense of a rune array is three-dimensional, which is circular, like a bubble. But now, the clan land exists in a flat surface and is spread over a wide area. Building a rune array that covers the entire clan land will waste at least 80% of the rune array's energy. But if it's a three-dimensional underground city, it will be different. At least 60% of the rune array's defensive range will be used. In other words, building an underground city can save almost half of the energy consumption. This is only from a single layer of rune arrays. If we include multiple layers of defensive rune arrays, the energy savings will be even more impressive. Building an underground city may cost a lot in one go, but after a long time, the cost will decrease." After Yang Tian finished speaking, most of the people present nodded. "There's another problem." Another manager stood up and said, "In the future, there will be fewer casualties. Even the ordinary people living in the underground city won't be harmed. The population will increase rapidly. How can we solve this problem?" After this person finished speaking, the words family planning appeared in Yang Tian's mind. He couldn't help but laugh. When Yang Tian laughed, everyone looked at him, thinking that he had an answer. "Isn't it a good thing to have more people?" Yang Tian was stunned for a moment before he laughed and said, "With more people, we can open up a new clan land. Sometimes, having more people is also a form of strength, isn't it?" Yang Tian meant that there was strength in numbers. After speaking, Yang Tian sat down. As Yang Tian spoke frankly and answered questions, Huey Chan Chan looked at Yang Tian with brighter and brighter eyes. "Is there anyone else who has an opinion? If not, we'll carry it out." Clan leader Huey Baixing glanced at the people below. Seeing that no one had any more questions, he spoke up. As soon as Radiance Baixing finished speaking, the elders and the other leaders nodded and agreed to the plan of building an underground city. "Good. Yang Tian, you will be in charge of this. During the construction period, you can use the manpower of the various divisions. Meow Meow, you will cooperate with Yang Tian." "Yes." Everyone immediately stood up and bowed to Huey Baixing. Yang Tian was flattered by Huey Baixing's order. He thought to himself, this clan leader is really bold. Chapter 654. After leaving the meeting hall, Yang Tian went back to the Rune Division through the teleportation formation. Huey Meow Meow and Huey Chan Chan followed Yang Tian closely. Now, the Rune Division's attitude towards Yang Tian was very different. They had prepared a large workshop for Yang Tian. After entering the workshop, Yang Tian closed the door. Under the curious gazes of the two sisters, he started to draw the blueprint. If only he had advanced electronic technology. In less than an hour, he would be able to print out the blueprint. But now, he had to draw it by hand. Although the strange program controlled his body to draw the blueprint, it was still very tiring for Yang Tian. This was because he had to control his thoughts to prevent them from affecting the strange program. After 10 days, Yang Tian finished drawing the blueprint. Then, he used another 5 days to list the various materials needed to build the underground city. There were hundreds of blueprints, and the list of materials was also dozens of pages. They were all very thick. After finishing all these, he was not done yet. Later on, Yang Tian still needed to choose a location, plan the construction process, method, and various manpower. Luckily, these tasks only needed Yang Tian to give a general direction. The specific plans could be divided up by the various departments. After handing over the blueprints and the list of materials, Yang Tian felt much more relaxed. The chosen location was next to the clan's land. Thousands of people in the Rune Division started to move at the same time. They circled an area of dozens of kilometers and set up the talisman array that Yang Tian had drawn. Immediately, hundreds of thousands of people started working at the same time, digging a V-shaped pit that was thousands of meters deep in this area. Hui Miao Miao was sent out by Yang Tian to be in charge of purchasing materials. Most of the materials were bluestones that were fine and could be used to carve runes. Luckily, there were storage tools, so transportation was very convenient. Otherwise, it would take 10 years to build a huge underground city. In less than half a month, all the materials that Yang Tian needed were gathered. Yang Tian heard that in order to obtain these materials, Hui Miao Miao had even gone to the distant cloud region and spent more than half of the Hui clan's wealth. At the same time, Yang Tian also received news that it wasn't just the Hui family. Other families were also starting to build new family land. Some of the high-level talisman masters from the 3 shrines were invited by some clans to design new clan lands for them. It was said that the exotic beasts from the Milky Way had already ventured deep into this continent. It was estimated that another beast tide would erupt in less than 3 years. This was a strange world. In order to prevent the mechanical race from becoming stronger, the humans insisted on not using high-tech electronic devices. Even the cloud region was the same. Otherwise, the beast tide wouldn't be a big problem for humans. Yang Tian flipped through the history of this continent when he was free and finally found out the reason. It turned out that in the distant past, the automaton race relied on their fast reproduction speed and powerful attack power to almost unify the entire continent. They wanted to turn all humans with physical bodies into automatons. Under the combined suppression of the cultivators, the automaton race was weakened. From then on, humans no longer used high-tech electronic devices. Instead, they began to research talisman methods and used rune energy to replace electronic energy. After reading this history, Yang Tian took out a red crystal from his storage bracelet. This was left behind by a beautiful automaton woman during the last beast tide after her mechanical body was destroyed. From this crystal, it could be seen that the automaton race also used rune energy. Moreover, they weren't inferior to humans. It was worth mentioning that the automaton race could also cultivate. They could cultivate just like humans with physical bodies. However, their cultivation methods were completely different. As for what kind of cultivation methods they used, there were no detailed records in the history books. This was because this was a huge secret to the automaton race. Cultivators with physical bodies weren't interested in this either. Looking at the red crystal in his hand, Yang Tian had a vague feeling that he might need this item one day. Under the orders of the clan leader, the middle and low-level cultivators also joined the construction team. Millions of people took turns to dig the hole. In less than 3 months, they dug a V-shaped hole with a radius of more than 50 kilometers and a depth of 5,000 meters. Yang Tian was shocked by the speed of the work. Actually, there was nothing strange about this. The people of this world were strong to begin with. With the addition of cultivators to help transport soil and other materials, it was equivalent to simplifying the process. The rune energy produced by the rune array designed by the strange program repelled all the water vapor outside. During the construction process, not only was there no water seeping, even the sand and stones dug out from the bottom of the pit were very dry. It was worth mentioning that when they dug to a depth of 5,000 meters, they actually discovered a rich Laos crystal mine buried underground. This made the Radiance Disaster 100 stars both happy and helpless, because they couldn't possibly find another place to dig such a big hole just for this Laos crystal mine, right? Therefore, they could only endure the pain and continue. After the hole was dug, the people of the Rune Division started to get busy again. They had to set up another rune array in this big hole to form a 3D projection. After this projection was completed, they started to use bluestones to surround this 3D projection and build the shape of the underground city. Xiaolong, after this place is completed, we will be the hunting division, Yang Tian said to the listless little blue dragon as he sat on a pile of bluestones and looked at the bustling scene in front of him. This period of time had been very boring for the little blue dragon. Yang Tian also felt the same. He felt as if his bones were about to rust. He didn't know if the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars would agree. Just as Yang Tian was deep in thought, a group of people walked over from afar. The leader was the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. Half a step behind him was a beautiful woman who was comparable to the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. This beautiful woman was dressed in a white robe. Her aura was completely different from the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars. She was like a fairy. Based on her appearance, she was about 27 or 28 years old. Behind this white-robed woman were more than 10 experts with powerful auras. These people were obviously not from the Radiance family. This was because they didn't have the Radiance family's symbol on their bodies. The Radiance Disaster 100 Stars and the white-robed woman chatted as they walked. They were obviously talking about the underground city that was being built. The white-robed woman looked interested and nodded from time to time. Yang Tian looked at the white-robed woman a few more times before retracting his gaze. Then, he looked at the construction site in front of him. Although this underground city was designed by a strange program, if it was built, Yang Tian would have a strong sense of accomplishment. Yang Tian, you are here. Yang Tian was lost in his thoughts when the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars voice sounded not far away. Yang Tian turned his head and saw the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars leading the white-robed woman and her group over. Yang Tian, this is the leader of the 100 Sound family, 100 Sound Seun. Then, the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars said to the white-robed woman, this is our family's talisman genius, Yang Tian. Female leader. And a beautiful woman. At this moment, Yang Tian was a little overwhelmed. He didn't understand why the Radiance Disaster 100 Stars had brought this female leader over. Chapter 655. Hello. Yang Tian stood up and nodded at the woman named by Ming Siyun. Were you the one who designed this underground city? Beiming Siyun asked with a smile as she sized up Yang Tian. Yes. Yang Tian nodded. Yang Tian. He only joined the Hui Yi clan recently, right? Beiming Siyun turned her head and asked the Hui Yi Baixing. The Hui Yi Baixing smiled and nodded. All right. You wouldn't have any objections if I invited Yang Tian to join the Beiming clan, would you? Beiming Siyun asked with a smile. When she said this, Beiming Siyun looked very serious. She didn't seem to be joking. The Hui Yi Baixing laughed heartily. If Yang Tian is willing, I won't object. However, before he leaves, he has to help me complete the underground city. What do you think, Yang Tian? After the Hui Yi Baixing said this, he stared at Yang Tian. Yang Tian suddenly understood that this was probably a test from the Hui Yi Baixing. If he said that he wanted to leave the Hui Yi clan, he would probably die once the underground city was completed. The Hui Yi Baixing usually looked very amiable and treated Yang Tian very well. However, if Yang Tian wanted to leave the Hui Yi clan and join another clan, he would be an enemy to the Hui Yi clan. The Hui Yi Baixing wouldn't show any mercy to his enemies. Countless clans in the Flame Domain were constantly competing with each other. Yang Tian didn't have any plans to leave the Hui Yi clan for the time being. He smiled and said, Clan leader, you must be joking. At least in the Flame Domain, I won't leave the Hui Yi clan. After Yang Tian said this, Beiming Siyun shook her head helplessly. She turned around and walked towards the large pit. The Hui Baixing was very satisfied that Yang Tian hadn't said that he would stay in the Hui clan forever. This was because the Hui family's foundation was in the flame domain. Yang Tian, you can't leave the Hui family. The leader is so nice to you. After the group of people left, Hui Chanchan ran over and pouted at Yang Tian. Yang Tian said, "Don't worry, it won't happen." The news that the female god had appeared in the cloud domain had already spread throughout the entire continent. Yang Tian, who was in the flame domain, had only received some superficial information. However, the reaction of the cultivators in the cloud region was great. The female god who came to the cloud domain did not go to the 3 shrines to receive the worship of the people. Instead, she went to the tallest mountain in the cloud domain and left behind 5 strange words on the top of the mountain. After the female deity left, countless cultivators flocked to the foot of the mountain. They looked up at the words and tried to guess what they meant. These were 5 traditional Chinese characters. Other than the cultivators from Earth, no one could recognize them. Some cultivators guessed that this was a way to cross the star ocean or a path. Some people guessed that the god had left behind a treasure on the continent and that these words were where the treasure was buried. Some people guessed that this was a cultivation technique. As long as they understood the profound meaning of these words, they would be able to break through their current realm. The 3 shrines in the cloud domain were the Starry Sky Shrine, the Sky Domain Shrine, and the Limitless Shrine. In response to these 5 words, the 3 temple masters issued an announcement that whoever could unravel the secret of these 5 words would be able to become a temple master. A shrine master was a higher rank than a deacon in the shrines and had a lot of power. Compared to the position in the Superstar Shrine, a shrine master was equivalent to an ordinary divine general. In the shrines, a rank higher than a shrine master was the Grand Shrine Master. Above that was the deacon and then the shrine master. If he could become a manager in the temple, his future would be bright. This was because their cultivation resources for the rest of their lives were all provided by the shrines. Not only did a shrine master receive benefits from the shrines, but they would also receive gifts from various families during the shrine's recruitment test. This was a generous income for the shrines. Also, after becoming a shrine master, as long as they didn't make any major mistakes, they would be in the position for life. Deacons would be tested every once in a while. Those who failed would be kicked out of the shrines. After becoming a shrine master, they would be far away from this kind of test. They would even receive a lot of benefits during the test. The 5 words were copied down by the cultivators and then copied into countless copies. It didn't take long for almost every cultivator in the cloud domain to have a copy. Since he had nothing to do, Yang Tian took out the barbecue tools that Ka Cha had ordered and some special spices from this world to barbecue the meat. Turned out that these tools were all deformed after they were taken out of this world. They couldn't be used anymore. Seeing that Yang Tian was about to barbecue the meat, the little blue dragon immediately flew over and landed on the grill. After Yang Tian placed some charcoal in the grill, it opened its mouth and spat out dragon flames to ignite the charcoal. Yang Tian took out a large piece of fresh beast meat and cut it into palm-sized pieces. He sprinkled some powdery spices on it and placed it on the grill to barbecue. Soon, sizzling sounds came from the roasted meat, and the aroma of the meat spread out. Hui Chanchan watched curiously and expectantly as Yang Tian flipped the meat with a metal clamp. When the meat was cooked and Yang Tian placed it on a plate, she reached out and snatched the plate. However, before she could do anything, she saw a green shadow sweep across the plate and a large piece of steaming meat was taken away by the little blue dragon. "You bad dragon! Greedy dragon! Give it back to me!" Hui Chanchan looked at the empty plate and was furious. She stomped her feet and threw the plate away. She roared and chased after the little blue dragon. However, the little blue dragon was too fast and she couldn't catch up. Seeing this, Yang Tian couldn't help but laugh. "This meat tastes good. At this moment, Hui Meow Meow walked over and said with a smile, "Barbecue meat, it smells good, right? Do you want a piece?" Yang Tian turned around and looked at Hui Meow Meow and said with a smile. Hui Meow Meow didn't say anything. She passed a piece of paper to Yang Tian and said, "Look at the words on it, do you recognize them? I got this from a stone merchant when I went to the cloud region. I heard that it was left behind by a god. I don't know if it has anything to do with runes." While Hui Meow Meow was speaking, Yang Tian had already opened the folded paper. When he saw the words on it, his eyes opened wide. The words on the paper were written backwards. "Yang Tian, I will wait for you." Seeing these words, Yang Tian became very excited. This means that Qin Fei still remembers him. Otherwise, she wouldn't have left these words behind. "You recognize it?" Hui Meow Meow asked when she saw Yang Tian's wide-opened eyes and emotional appearance. Hui Meow Meow's voice caused Yang Tian to come back to his senses. "I don't recognize it, but I have seen these words before. These should be words used by God." Yang Tian naturally didn't want to tell Hui Meow Meow the contents of these words and casually made up a story. Hui Meow Meow said, "God doesn't use these words. This is a new type of words. It's a pity that there are only 5 words. I can't understand its meaning." Yang Tian said, "Can I keep it? I can take it out and study it in the future. Maybe I can guess its meaning." Hui Meow Meow nodded and then asked Yang Tian, "After this underground city is built, do you really want to go to the hunting division?" "Of course," Yang Tian said. "This kind of life and cultivation isn't suitable for me." As he spoke, Yang Tian placed a piece of roasted meat on a plate and passed it to Hui Meow Meow. Hui Meow Meow nodded and took the plate from Yang Tian's hand. The little blue dragon wanted to snatch it again. A green shadow flashed, but it was caught by Hui Meow Meow. "Auntie, give it to me. I want to teach it a lesson." Seeing that her sister caught the little blue dragon, Hui Chan Chan, who was panting from running, shouted. However, Hui Meow Meow let go of the little blue dragon. This was because the little blue dragon had already opened its mouth and dragon flames were brewing in its mouth. Chapter 656. Auntie. After Hui Meow Meow had no choice but to release the little blue dragon, Hui Chan Chan stomped her feet and shouted unhappily, "Chan Chan, don't be like a child. You are already grown up. In 2 months you will be 15 years old. You are an adult. You have to act like an adult." Hui Meow Meow used a serious tone to lecture her younger sister. The little blue dragon landed on Yang Tian's shoulder and looked at Hui Chan Chan with a smile. "Humph, stupid dragon, I will teach you a lesson in the future." After Hui Meow Meow finished speaking, Hui Chan Chan waved her little fist at the little blue dragon and threatened. The little blue dragon turned its head away in disdain. "Xiao Long, stop fooling around. Let Chan Chan eat some." Yang Tian looked at the little blue dragon on his shoulder and said with a smile. The little blue dragon nodded. After eating the barbecued meat, the 3 of them started to patrol the huge pit. After reading the message that Qin Fei left for him, Yang Tian was as excited as if he was injected with chicken blood. Half a year later, the underground city was finally completed. Such a huge project was completed in half a year. In Yang Tian's eyes, it was a miracle. The completed underground city was half exposed on the surface and was in the shape of an inverted golden pagoda. The original huge pit was also in the shape of a triangle. There were also mechanisms that were activated by talisman arrays on the periphery. The waterproof talisman arrays had been removed. The triangular pit was already filled with water and became a huge lake. To celebrate the completion of the underground city, the Hui family even held a grand celebration. Dozens of family leaders who were on good terms with the Hui family were invited. These people were also very willing to look at this special building because it could be used as a reference. Many family leaders even wanted to get the complete set of building blueprints from the Hui family. However, Yang Tian had already thought of this. After the underground city was completed, he destroyed all the blueprints. It was impossible for humans to create such precise blueprints. Even if someone copied some blueprints during the construction process, it was useless. Towards Yang Tian's way of doing things, the Radiant's 100 Stars was full of praise. The celebration ceremony was very lively. Tens of millions of people surrounded the clan grounds, drinking and dancing. The lively atmosphere dispersed the clouds in the sky. Yang Tian, are you alright? Before activating, Hueha Baixing softly asked Yang Tian, who was standing beside him. Yang Tian nodded confidently. Lord Patriarch, there's no problem. I've inspected it carefully. It's even more perfect than I imagined. Hearing Yang Tian's reply, Hueha Baixing finally relaxed. They had spent a lot of money and invited so many guests. If they failed, the Hui race would lose all face in the cloud region. As the ceremony came to an end, Hueha Baixing finally stood up. Tens of millions of people surrounded the edge of the crater. The originally noisy scene gradually quieted down. People looked curiously and expectantly at this huge triangular structure that was as big as a mountain range and made of bluestone. Let's start, the Radiant Star said calmly. Although his voice was soft, it was made with a special power and could be heard far away. The person in charge of controlling the rune mechanism was Tai Xing. As soon as the voice of the Radiant Star faded, Tai Xing closed a mechanism that looked like an electric box that activated the rune array system. The enormous inverted triangle began to rumble and vibrate. Then, this huge triangular structure that looked like it was floating in the water started to sink slowly. In the process of sinking, the water in the pit overflowed, forming a huge wave. A series of splashing sounds could be heard, and the people standing at the edge of the pit were all drenched like drowned rats. Ha ha ha! Amidst the rumbling sounds, the people whose clothes were soaked by the water couldn't help but laugh. The underground city sank very quickly. In less than 20 minutes, it had sunk into the water. Then, huge waves appeared on the surface of the water before it slowly calmed down. After the underground city had completely sunk into the water level started to fall rapidly until it was level with the underground water. Hueha Baixing and many people from other clans came to the edge of the crater and looked down. In the crater that was hundreds of meters deep, they could only see the clear and calm water. But that wasn't all. After the water level stopped falling, rumbling sounds started again. On the upper layer of the triangular crater, walls that were hundreds of meters thick extended out from each side and started to close slowly. More than 10 minutes later, there was a rumbling sound. The protective layer on the surface of the underground layer closed together. The huge crater disappeared and was covered by bricks that were carved with runes. One had to know that this layer of bricks was hundreds of meters thick. Coupled with the protection of the runes, even 100-change realm beast would find it difficult to break through this defense in a short time. After the surface was sealed, countless green stone pillars with a diameter of more than 10 meters rose around the crater. When these stone pillars rose to a height of more than 10 meters, they stopped. Suddenly, the surroundings changed into the style of a mountain forest, and the original stone pillars turned into huge trees. This was a visual disguise. An old clan leader standing beside Hueha Baixing saw this and couldn't help but exclaim, "This is too real." Hueha Baixing smiled and said to everyone, "Everyone, follow me. After passing through this forest, we will enter the underground city." After speaking, Hueha Baixing entered the illusory forest under Yang Tian's lead. They shuttled between the trees in a regular pattern. Soon, the scene in front of them changed from the forest to the city. The city that appeared in front of them now wasn't illusory, but real. The strange thing was that there was a blue sky in the city and there was a huge star in the sky. Other than that, there was a light breeze with a faint fragrance of plants. The city was not big, and Hueha Baixing quickly brought the guests to the edge of the underground city. He pointed at the city wall and said, "This is the end. Outside the wall, there is also the sky. They are all simulated using talisman arrays. However, this light is real. It can allow the strong grain trees to grow normally. In other words, as long as this underground city isn't destroyed, we can live here forever. But this city is too small. It can only hold a few 100,000 people, right?" Someone said the moment Hueha Baixing finished speaking. Hueha Baixing said, "This is only the first level. There are hundreds of levels below that can hold 50 million people." All the patriarchs were shocked when they heard Radiant Disaster Baixing's words. This kind of three-dimensional living space could actually accommodate so many people. Many of the patriarchs rolled their eyes, wondering if they should build an underground city like this. Yang Tian knew the female clan leader, Baiming Siun, looked at Yang Tian and asked, "How much did it cost?" Hueha Baixing said, "This underground city cost me everything. If it doesn't succeed, I won't have the face to stay in the flame domain anymore." Hueha Baixing said this because he didn't want to reveal the true number. This was a huge secret. Everyone understood this point and no one asked anymore. Next, Hueha Baixing brought people to tour the lower levels. They mainly looked at the layout of the city. Under the request of a clan leader, Hueha Baixing brought the clan leaders to the top 2 levels to look at the situation of the plantation. The plantation hadn't started planting, but the pits for the strong grain trees had been set up. "I want to know where the light from the divine star comes from. Is it also produced by a talisman array?" While touring the plantation, a clan leader asked curiously. The divine star was the star in the sky. It was the sun that Yang Tian spoke of. Hueha Baixing smiled and didn't answer. This was also a secret. The living conditions of this underground city were very good, but how was its defense? Everyone was unsure. They didn't ask, and even if they did, Hueha Baixing wouldn't answer. Only Yang Tian knew, if the talisman array of this underground city is fully activated, its defense can be described as abnormal. Other than defense, it also has a unique offensive ability. If mutated beasts came, they could turn a large area outside into a high-temperature environment. No matter how strong a mutated beast was, it wouldn't want to stay in such an environment for long. What if mutated beasts attacked from underground? This was also possible. Yang Tian had also considered this point. The periphery of the underground city was surrounded by a thick layer of water. After the water layer, there was a 10-meter thick bluestone wall. After passing these 2 barriers, there was also a powerful talisman array. At a critical moment, the huge teleportation formation under the underground city would be activated, and this huge city would be transferred to another underground space. Of course, that space hadn't started construction yet. These were all things that the clan leaders didn't know. Hueha Baixing only brought them in to see the situation on the surface. After the tour, the tens of millions of people outside all entered the underground city. They entered their respective residences according to their number plate. It was easy to enter but difficult to leave. After ordinary people entered, they weren't allowed to leave unless there were special circumstances. Actually, for these people, they couldn't wait to stay here and not leave, because it was safe here. They didn't want to face a beast tide and watch their friends and family fall under the claws of mutated beasts and become their food. After sending off the guests, Hueha Baixing came to the residences at the lowest level. After sitting in the room for a long time, Hueha Baixing finally made up his mind. He immediately asked someone to call Hueha Miao Miao over. "Auntie, how old are you this year?" After Hueha Miao Miao walked into the room, Hueha Baixing asked his beautiful sister to sit beside him. 67, Hueha Miao Miao replied. Actually, Hueha Baixing remembered Hueha Miao Miao's age. He asked this question to start the conversation. On Earth, people who were 67 years old were considered old. However, in this world, 67 years old was only equivalent to 27 or 28 years old. 67 years old. It's time for you to find a man, Hueha Baishing said calmly. Hueha Miao Miao knew that her elder brother still had something to say, so she didn't answer. As expected, Hueha Baishing paused and said, I think Yang Tian is a good person. What do you think? Yang Tian? Hueha Miao Miao frowned. Hueha Miao Miao had never considered the relationship between a man and a woman. Her goal was to become a high-level cultivator. She was still far from her goal. Brother, I don't want to consider this problem, Hueha Miao Miao said. However, Hueha Baishing said, then it's decided. Settle this as soon as possible. You have to understand that Yang Tian is a rare genius. If we miss this opportunity, we will regret it in the future. Hueha Miao Miao knew that her elder brother was thinking for the family. She thought for a while, sighed and nodded in agreement. However, Yang Tian. Hueha Baishing became serious when he saw that his sister had agreed. Hueha Baishing was good at reading people. He knew that Yang Tian wasn't someone who would be controlled by others. If he didn't do this well, it would make Yang Tian feel disgusted. After thinking for a while, Hueha Baishing suddenly laughed. He finally thought of a good idea. Miao Miao, go back and prepare, Hueha Baishing said with a smile. Okay. Hueha Miao Miao nodded. She stood up and got a room. Chapter 657. Huey Miao Miao and Huey Baishing were the same type of people. To them, personal feelings were more important than family interests. Moreover, Yang Tian was not an annoying person in Huey Miao Miao's eyes. In fact, he was rather cute. In Huey Miao Miao's eyes, the two of them could at least get along harmoniously. After walking out of Huey Baishing's room, Huey Miao Miao recalled the situation at the mine. At that time, Yang Tian was still an inconspicuous minor. Huey Miao Miao remembered this incident clearly. Actually, after Yang Tian had arrived at the clan grounds, Huey Miao Miao had seen Yang Tian and remembered who Yang Tian was. After his sister left, Huey Baishing pondered for a long time. Using a marriage alliance to tie Yang Tian to the Hui family was undoubtedly the best method. The Hui family did not lack cultivation talents. What they lacked were talisman masters, medicine masters, and such. Huey Baishing predicted that if Yang Tian could help the Hui family, the family would rise rapidly in the next 100 years. It would not be difficult for them to establish an empire in the Yin domain. Besides thinking highly of Yang Tian, Huey Baishing was also a little worried. The design of this underground city had been completed by Yang Tian alone. What if Yang Tian had ulterior motives and left a back door in the rune system of the clan grounds? Therefore, after the construction of this special underground city, the activation process had been completed by a group of people led by Tai Xing. Yang Tian was already used to the calculation ability of strange programming in terms of runes, so he did not find it surprising. However, to others, the feeling was completely different. For example, even if the high-level talisman masters from the temple were invited and given the same amount of time, they would not be able to build this underground city so perfectly. Yang Tian was a person who valued perfection. Most of the people in the original clan grounds had already moved into the underground city. After Beiming Xiyun left the underground city, she did not go far. Instead, she waited in the forest behind a small mountain. She sat casually on a rock in the forest, surrounded by hundreds of cultivators on guard. After a while, an ordinary-looking middle-aged man in a black robe arrived in the forest. "How's the investigation going?" Bai Ming Xiyun asked after the black-robed man arrived. "Patriarch, I've already investigated thoroughly. This underground city is more perfect than we imagined. What you saw before was only the surface of the city. I learned a lot in the runes division." As he spoke, the black-robed man took out a stack of blueprints from his storage bracelet and handed it to Beiming Xiyun. Beiming Xiyun didn't reach out to take the stack of blueprints. An old man not far behind her quickly walked over and took the blueprints from the black-robed middle-aged man's hands. Then, he flipped through the blueprints one by one. The black-robed middle-aged man said, "This is part of the design of the underground city. Because the blueprints are too complicated, I only copied some important blueprints." The old man who was flipping through the blueprints was obviously a talisman master. After looking through the blueprints, he shook his head and said to Bai Ming-seun, "These blueprints are far from enough. It seems that we will have to pay a price if we want to build the same underground city. How about we poach Tai Xing?" Bai Ming-seun said, "With Yang Tian around, Tai Xing's position in the Hui clan should be a little awkward, right?" The black-robed middle-aged man said, "Patriarch, this is impossible. You might not know, but Tai Xing is too obsessed with Talisman Dao. He said that he wants to stay in the underground city and study all the rune mechanisms thoroughly. Moreover, even if he joins the Baiming clan, he won't be able to help us build such a perfect underground city. This is because although Tai Xing participated in the construction process, he didn't. However, the crucial parts, such as the exquisite runes, were all personally carved by Yang Tian. He's simply a rune machine. I've never seen anyone who can carve runes so exquisitely." After the black-robed middle-aged man finished speaking, Bai Ming-seun frowned and fell into deep thought. After a while, the old man who was flipping through the runes said, "Patriarch, we can't let go of a talent like Yang Tian." Bai Ming-seun nodded and said, "But how can we make Yang Tian work for us?" The old man said, "Even if we can't make use of this person, we can't let him be used by the Hui clan. If we can't, then kill him." The black-robed middle-aged man said, "From what I know, Yang Tian doesn't want to stay in the Rune Division. He wants to go to the Hunting Division. If that's the case, we'll definitely have a chance." "Does Yang Tian have any hobbies?" Bai Ming-seun thought for a while and asked. The black-robed middle-aged man said, "I'm not too sure about this, but there's one thing that you might be interested in. Yang Tian was born in the Hui clan's mine. His background is unknown. When he was still a minor, when he first met Huey Meow Meow, he said that he wanted to sleep with Huey Meow Meow. Now that he's in the Hui clan, he's very close to Huey Meow Meow. Yang Tian was too outstanding now. His background and some of the things that he had encountered had already been dug up." Bai Ming-seun smiled and said, "It's normal for a man to like a beautiful woman. Let's talk about this later. You've been out for so long. Hurry back to avoid arousing suspicion." "Yes." The black-robed middle-aged man bowed to Bai Ming-seun and left the grove in a flash. After the black-robed middle-aged man left, Bai Ming-seun took out a mirror from her storage bracelet and looked at herself in the mirror. Seeing this, the old man frowned. 10 days later. After the initial chaos, the order of the underground city became neat and tidy. The people living in the city quickly adapted to the new living environment. In fact, the environment here was even more comfortable than outside. The rune array could adjust the temperature in the city at the right time, allowing the temperature to remain at a comfortable temperature. In the past, the weather had been very hot. The reason why the flame region was called the flame region was because of the high temperature. Especially in the summer, the light from the stars in the sky could cook raw meat. With a suitable temperature, the growth of the strong grain trees was 20% faster than before. In other words, the annual output could be increased by 20%. Yang Tian's contribution was the greatest. He was given an independent courtyard in the underground city. The courtyard was located at the bottom of the underground city. Now, besides Yang Tian and the little blue dragon, there were more than 10 carefully selected guards led by Karcha. Early in the morning, Yang Tian had just woken up when he heard shouts coming from the courtyard. Just like before, Karcha got his subordinates to wake up early to train. After opening the door, Yang Tian raised his head and looked up. It was a clear sky. This unique underground city was now running smoothly, Yang Tian felt that it was time for him to head out to the outside world for training. He still didn't know much about this world. The best way was to join the hunting division. Yang Tian. Not long after breakfast, the courtyard door was pushed open. The lively Hui Chanchan ran in and saw Yang Tian strolling in the courtyard. She cried out in surprise and ran to Yang Tian. Yang Tian, come out and play with me, Hui Chanchan said. Yang Tian shook his head. I'm afraid not today. I have to go to the hunting division. You're serious? Hui Chanchan's eyes widened when she heard Yang Tian's words. Yang Tian smiled. Of course it's true. I feel like I'm getting old if I stay here all the time. With that, Ka Cha walked over with the other two and smiled at Hui Chanchan. Hello, Lil Nyang. After greeting her, Karcha said to Yang Tian, we can go now. Hui Chanchan hurriedly said, Yang Tian, I'll go with you. Chapter 658. In every family, the hunting division was a special existence. It could be said that everyone in the hunting division was a fugitive. The chief manager of the hunting division usually didn't show himself. Just like in the last meeting, the chief manager of the hunting division didn't show himself. Apart from the patriarch and a few elders, no one knew who the chief manager of the hunting division was and what his real identity was. In a family, the lowest-ranking members were ordinary humans. The ones in charge of the production and life of these ordinary humans were the managers of each region. In terms of defense, the lowest-ranking members were ordinary humans who had a certain level of strength. They could also be called basic cultivators. When Yang Tian had just entered the Hui family, he was already such a person. Then there were the small captains in charge of these people. Karcha used to be such a person. This kind of basic defense force was divided into regions. Each region had a manager. Above them were the various divisions mainly made up of cultivators. The divisions Yang Tian knew now were the Rune Division, the Hunting Division, the Alchemy Division, the Forging Division, the Clan Guardian Division. There were more than 10 divisions in total. In fact, this already formed a very efficient governing body. The chief managers of each division were directly responsible to the patriarch. Their status in the family was second only to the elders. It was worth mentioning that all the elders belonged to the Clan Guardian Division. The Clan Guardian Division was responsible for patrolling the family land and managing the salaries of the family members. It was actually similar to the imperial clan court in China's ancient times. All the divisions, except the chief manager of the hunting division, were publicly appointed by the current patriarch. Then what about the chief manager of the hunting division? He was secretly appointed by the experts selected from the direct family members of each family after a cruel test. If the chief manager of the hunting division died, the chief, Hueha Baixing, and a few other elders would call for an emergency meeting. They would select hundreds or thousands of elites from the tribe and make them wear masks and eat iron walnuts that prevented them from talking. They would hold the standard weapons that were specially assigned to them and begin the test. The process of the test was extremely cruel. Even two people who had a good relationship with each other would meet and kill each other during the test. The 19 people who survived in the end, or less than 19 people, would go through another round of special training and tests. The most outstanding ones would be the chief manager of the hunting division. As for the rest, they would be in charge or be assigned to other departments or supervisors. Some of them would even be sent to other clans as spies. The 100 Cry family had planted spies in the Hui family, and so did the Hui family. The members of the hunting division were actually a group of people who lived in the dark. Many members of the hunting division and their families did not even know their true identities. Maybe those playboys who flirted with women on the streets were actually members of the hunting division. What accompanied these people was almost all slaughter. Although they were walking on the edge of a knife, the hunting department's rewards were extremely generous. After a long period of life and death experiences, their cultivation realms had also improved extremely quickly. Yang Tian had a certain understanding of the above. After entering the hunting division, except for special circumstances, one would have to wear a special set of armor. They were not allowed to use their previous names, only their serial numbers were used. Yang Tian reckoned that after he joined the hunting division, everyone in the hunting division would know who he was, because with the little blue dragon by his side, it would be hard for others not to know him. Under Ka Cha's guidance and Hui Yichanchan's accompaniment, Yang Tian arrived at the entrance of the hunting division. There was a green stone tablet at the entrance, with blood-red words engraved on it. Yang Tian stood in front of the tablet and glanced at it. There was a warning written on it, which roughly explained that after joining the hunting division, the death rate would be very high. Those who valued their lives should not enter. Those who did not meet the conditions agreed upon by the hunting division were not allowed to leave the hunting division. Those who violated any of the rules of the hunting division would be severely punished, and so on. It was Hui Yichanchan's first time seeing the contents of the tablet. After reading it, she started to worry for Yang Tian. She pulled on Yang Tian's arm and said, "Yang Tian, it's better if you don't join the hunting division. This is too cruel." Although Hui Yichanchan was young, she was not ignorant. She knew that with Yang Tian's ability in runes, he could obtain a very high position in the family and develop together with the family. Hui Yichanchan could not understand Yang Tian's actions. Looking at Yang Tian, he did not look like an idiot or a lunatic. How could she understand that what Yang Tian needed was something that the Hui Yi family could not provide? He needed to improve rapidly in a short period of time. Yang Tian only smiled at Hui Yichanchan's dissuasion. He patted Hui Yichanchan's arm and walked towards the entrance of the hunting division. Even though she was the family head's sister, Hui Yichanchan could not enter as she pleased. She could only look at Yang Tian's back and the little blue dragon on Yang Tian's shoulder and stomp her foot angrily. "Stop!" When Yang Tian walked to the entrance, he was stopped by two people wearing black armor and sealed helmet. Yang Tian immediately took out a register and handed it to one of the guards. Ka Cha had already prepared the registration form for Yang Tian and had already filled in his name. The hunting division did not have any restrictions when it came to recruiting members. As long as they were cultivators, it did not matter what level they were at. Although there was no threshold, everyone knew that if one did not have powerful battle strength, a smart brain, tenacious willpower and luck, one could forget about leaving the hunting division alive. It was not an academy or a charity organization, but a fugitive organization. There was no friendship or kindness here, only cruel killing and unscrupulous competition. Therefore, even if there were no restrictions, there were very few cultivators who wanted to enter the hunting division. After flipping through the register, the guard returned it to Yang Tian and gestured for Yang Tian to enter. "Wait." When Yang Tian received the registration form from the guard and was about to head inside, a middle-aged man's voice suddenly came from behind him. It was Huehe Baixing. Huehe Miao Miao was beside Huehe Baixing. Yang Tian turned around and smiled at the two of them. At this moment, one could see how special the hunting division was. When the two guards at the entrance saw Huehe Baixing, they did not move and did not bow to their chief. "Yang Tian, I don't understand why you're doing this." Huehe Baixing frowned and asked. Yang Tian smiled. "Chief, I've already thought about this. I hope you won't stop me." Huehe Baixing was silent for a moment and said, "After entering the hunting division, I'm no longer the chief and can't help you much. I won't stop you. To thank you for helping us build this city, I've already prepared a big gift for you." Yang Tian naturally understood that this was a temporary request. Since Huehe Baixing had come personally, he could not refuse. "Then I'll come again tomorrow." After speaking to the guard beside him, Yang Tian left the entrance of the hunting division and arrived in front of Huihe Baixing. Huihe Baixing laughed heartily and pulled Yang Tian to the nearest teleportation formation disc. When the blue light disappeared, what appeared in front of Yang Tian was a luxurious palace. This was where the Huihe family entertained important guests. Huihe Baixing had been pulling Yang Tian, as if he was afraid that Yang Tian would run away. When they arrived, he let go of Yang Tian's arm and said to Yang Tian, "Please." "Oh, okay." Yang Tian was stunned for a moment before nodding. At this moment, he felt that something was amiss. After entering the gate, they went around the screen wall and walked for a short distance before they entered a luxuriously decorated hall. Chapter 659. The main hall was already filled with people. Most of them were the elders of the Huihe family. Yang Tian only saw Tai Xing among the heads of the various departments. The main hall could hold a few hundred guests, but at this moment it seemed a little empty. When Yang Tian walked into the main hall, everyone turned their heads and looked at Yang Tian with complicated gazes. What was going on? Yang Tian was confused, but he was sure that something was going to happen, and it was related to him. Huihe Baixing walked to the main seat and sat down. Yang Tian was led by a servant to a seat below the elders. Huihe Miao Miao sat below Yang Tian. Huihe Chan Chan sat beside Huihe Miao Miao, sharing a table with her sister. This was a strange banquet. No one spoke, and the servants quickly brought the food over. On everyone's table, there was a plate of sapphire-like fruit and a pot of steaming hot soup that emitted a fishy smell. The soup was milky white and very similar to fish soup. However, it smelled really bad. "What soup is this?" Yang Tian turned his head and asked Huihe Chan Chan, who was not far from him. Huihe Chan Chan shook her head, indicating that she didn't know. "What about these fruits?" Yang Tian pointed at the sapphire-like fruits that looked like grapes and asked. Huihe Chan Chan shook her head again. This was strange. Although Huihe Chan Chan was young, she was Huihe Baixing's sister. She had a high status in the family and lived a good life. She should have seen these things before. When the two types of food were served, everyone looked at them and didn't move. The expression in their eyes. Some wanted to laugh, but they tried hard to hold it in. Some people frowned and remained motionless. Actually, Huihe Chan Chan knew the names of these two types of food, but Huihe Baixing had told her in advance to make Yang Tian stay. At the banquet, no matter what Yang Tian asked, she was not to answer. Huihe Chan Chan very loyally carried out her elder brother's orders. The food was served, and after a while, music started to play. A group of beautiful women entered the hall and started to dance. Huihe Baixing chuckled and said to everyone, "Everyone, please enjoy." The patriarch spoke. Everyone scooped a small bowl of soup and gulped it down. They seemed to be enjoying the soup with relish. The little blue dragon landed beside the soup pot, extended its head, and took a sip from the pot. Pfft! The little blue dragon thought that it was a delicious soup, but it didn't expect that when it drank it, its mouth was filled with a fishy and messy taste. It was so disgusting that it couldn't help but spit it out. Was it that bad? Yang Tian knew that the little blue dragon wasn't a picky eater. If it couldn't stand the taste, it probably wouldn't be good. Yang Tian scooped some into a small bowl with a spoon and dipped it onto his lip. As expected, the taste of the soup was worse than swill. Yang Tian used the ladle to stir the soup. A creature that looked like a fish appeared in the soup for a moment. The fish was white, and half of its stomach was cut open. There was even a piece of cooked innards hanging from it. After seeing this fish, Yang Tian had the urge to vomit. How could this be eaten? Yang Tian looked at Huihe Baixing on the stage and saw that he was scooping soup. He didn't expect that his soup would be the same. So, everyone's soup was the same. Seeing that Yang Tian wasn't used to this soup, Huihe Baixing smiled and said, "Yang Tian, this is a water beast soup. The water beast used to make this soup is called the Barbarian River. It only lives at the bottom of the flaming river. Their reproduction ability is very strong. Although there are many of them, they are very hard to catch. Even for everyone here, it's hard to get a taste of this soup. Because it has the effect of guiding blood flow, drinking a pot of this soup can smooth out the blood flow in your body. It's good stuff. Although it was good stuff, the taste. Yang Tian smiled bitterly. I'm not used to this taste. I don't want to drink it. Huehe Baixing smiled. Then do as you wish. But don't regret it. Smoothing out the blood flow in his body wasn't very useful to Yang Tian. Yang Tian nodded. After everyone drank the soup, the servants came in and took away the soup. Instead, they served some ordinary food. After drinking the soup, everyone began to eat the sapphire-like fruit. Yang Tian looked around and noticed that everyone was eating the fruit very seriously. It seemed like this was another treasure. This kind of fruit was like a grape. With a light pinch, the flesh inside would come out. When it was eaten, it was like eating a chili. A wave of heat spread from the mouth to the stomach, making people feel very comfortable. The taste was first bitter, then sweet and sour. Yang Tian could still tolerate the taste of this fruit. After eating 3, he asked with a smile, "Leader, what fruit is this?" Huehe Baixing said, "This fruit is called the starry fruit. Look at it, it's blue. Doesn't it look like the stars in the night sky?" Yang Tian nodded. Huehe Baixing continued, "This fruit has a special energy that can make people relax. But if you eat too much, your mind will be a little muddled. You might even have some beautiful illusions. That feeling is very good. After sleeping, you will feel refreshed." While Yang Tian and Huehe Baixing were talking, the little blue dragon also ate one. The little blue dragon, who loved meat, couldn't get used to this fruit. After eating one, he stopped. Hearing Huehe Baixing's words, Yang Tian thought of wine. He didn't expect this fruit to have the same effect as strong wine. Eating more of this shouldn't be a problem. At most, he would get drunk. Moreover, the taste of the fruit was very special. There were less than 20 starry fruits in a bunch. Seeing that Yang Tian liked it, Huehe Baixing called a servant over and gave his share to Yang Tian. Yang Tian scratched his head embarrassedly. After eating more than 10 starry fruits, Yang Tian was a little muddled. His face was red and his body was hot. He really wanted to find a big ice cube and stick it to his body. Although he was a little uncomfortable, Yang Tian tried his best to control himself. He didn't want to lose his composure in front of everyone. Seeing Yang Tian's muddled state, Huehe Baixing knew that it was about time. He smiled and said, "Today, I called everyone here to announce something." Huehe Baixing paused for a moment before continuing, "I plan to marry Auntie to Yang Tian." The elders already knew about this. Huehe Baixing didn't say anything after he finished speaking. "Auntie, are you willing?" Since no one objected, Huehe Baixing asked Huehe Miao Miao. Huehe Miao Miao stood up and nodded. Huehe Baixing then looked at Yang Tian. At this point, Yang Tian was already in a daze. Some blurry hallucinations appeared in his mind. Although Yang Tian had origin power in his body, the starry fruits weren't poisonous and wouldn't harm his cells. Without Yang Tian's control, his origin power would remain dormant. "Yang Tian, what do you think?" Huehe Baixing suddenly asked loudly. "You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.